What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello and welcome to part 1 of the final installment of my 2024 collection and declutter series, the Piece de Resistance eyeshadow palettes. And yes, you heard that correctly. This is going to be a 2-part video because we've got a lot to go through. Eyeshadow really had a moment this year, especially when it comes to indie brands. They were releasing things left and right, and clearly I have zero restraint when it comes to an eyeshadow palette because I am starting with a grand total of 404 palettes, and that's an obscene number of eyeshadow palettes. I know it, I recognize it, but to each their own. Here we are. This is a judgment-free zone, and keep in mind that my channel sort of centers around eyeshadow palette content. I do a lot of new palette videos, throwback Thursdays, palette rankings, and moving into the new year, I definitely want to do more palette bingos and some BYOPs. So yes, I do have a large collection, and while I love having a large collection, I don't need every single one of these palettes. There's a lot of them that are older in my collection and they're just kind of taking up space. Some of them I'm not reaching for anymore, and some of them I just didn't like the formula and they don't really have any relevance as far as content goes on my channel, so they need to be moved out and passed on to friends and family. Everything will be sanitized. They will get a chance to go through everything first, and whatever is left at the end of all of that will go up for sale on my Mercari about mid to end of January, and I will post that link in my community section once everything is up and ready to go. Now that we have all of that out of the way, please don't ask for any of my used makeup down in the comment section. It's weird, it's uncomfortable. I will ignore your comment and just move on with my life. But let's go ahead and jump into this because, like I said, we've got a lot of palettes to get through. Alright, y'all, let's go ahead and get this party started. So up first we have Cosmic Beauty, formerly known as Cosmic Brushes. I do have every single one of their palettes with the exception of the very first one they released. I believe that one's called Royal Rose. They discontinued it before I could get my hands on it, but this absolute favorite brand, top 5, no questions asked. They have an incredible formula. Their color stories are so unique and beautiful, and they're still more on the affordable side as far as indie brands go. Living here in the States, you do have to pay a little bit more for shipping, but it's totally worth it because of the formula. But the first one that we have is going to be this little guy right here. This is the Gothic palette. It's a 12-pan color story. It's the smallest one they've ever done. It came out last year, and this is one of my favorites. It's a monochromatic purple palette, but it's done right. It's got variety, it's got depth, it's got sort of like this dusty shade down here, it's got some more warm tones and cool tones, and look at this beautiful multi-chrome right here, like you can see that shift in the mirror. Stunning. Love that one. I'm not getting rid of any of these, by the way. Next we have the Culturals palette. This one came out this year with the Neutrals palette. This is beautiful. This is like a really popular color story. I mean, there was a lot of brands giving us this more blue and pink with like some pops of neutrals in it. We've again got some beautiful shimmers in here. We've got some multi-chromes and duochromes. This one right here, look at that shift in the mirror. So stunning. The Neutrals palette, one of my top palettes of the year. Like, look at that. Oh my gosh, it is neutral with a twist. This is a neutral palette for a colorful lover, or a color palette for a neutral lover, and it's just absolutely beautiful. My black shade down here did make a little bit of a mess, but look at those shifts in this palette. I hope it's capturing them. It's kind of hard to pick them up on the mirror sometimes, but stunning. We have Undergrowth, another one of my top palettes of the year, and this one, I didn't think I was going to love the color story as much as I do, because when I first saw it, I thought, oh, it's green, and I think it's because the packaging is green, the background is green, you've got the gold, but it's got some really pretty neutrals and like some warm tone neutrals in here. This chartreusey shade right here, stunning. I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorite shades to use on my inner corner. I love it as a pop. I use it so often, but this is just a almost monochromatic green palette done right. It is absolutely stunning. Green, I have really gotten to love this year. It was never a favorite of mine, but I've really kind of taken more of a liking to it. Winter Wonderland, a top favorite of mine from the brand. The color story in here, oh, it is just winter yumminess with those cool icy tones in here. You've got blues, greens, some pops of purples in here. These are the kind of cool tones that I like, and personally these are some of my favorite tones to play with. I just think they're so fun and vibrant. You can really go a little bit softer. You can add in a pop of color. Oh, I love that color story. Serenity. This was not the first one I got from the brand, but this was the palette that sort of put the brand on the map, and look at that color story. It is stunning. I mean, this blew up for a reason. It is very unique. I love how it's almost chaotic, but at the same time, it's very cohesive. This pop of orange up here, I think is so fun. I love the purples, the teals, the greens. Gorgeous palette. Muse. This was my first purchase from the brand. I saw this one and I was like, I need that color story, and I think this is still my absolute favorite color story from the brand. It's like murky but bright. It's very spring. I look at this and I think of like a garden, and it's stunning. I love the tones in here. I love the shades. I love the performance. The shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful, and I love it. And then we have Delicious Delights. This is their take on a pastel palette, but it's a little bit more poppy. It's got some depth to it. It's got vibrancy to it. Again, this shade right here, stunning. We've got a gorgeous multi-chrome. Like, look at those shifts. This one is so bright and fun and just different from any other pastel palette that I have in my collection. I do wish there was just a little bit more depth in this palette. It's very mid-tone, but I can always bring in something else from somewhere else in my collection. But that is all of my Cosmic Beauty. So let's go ahead and move on to the next brand. Next, we have all of my Adept palettes, and Adept is a brand that I do really love, but they're not a favorite of mine. Their matte formula is very hit or miss. Sometimes it's better than others, but it's their shimmers. Their shimmers are what keeps me coming back for more and why I have so many. So the first one I have is the Heather Austin palette. This was the first one I ever bought from the brand, and it is stunning. Look at that color story. The mattes in here, this is a good matte formula from the brand. They are very easy to blend. They're pigmented. You do have to work a little bit harder, but for the brand, they're easy to blend. I don't get patchiness, fallout, or anything like that, but these shimmers, y'all, these are so insanely impactful on the eye. I do get creasing depending on what eyeshadow primer I use. I have to be very specific with going in with my MAC Paint Pot and my NYX glitter primer. If I use a different primer or if I forget to do any of those, these will crease on me. I can tap it out. It's not a big deal, but I prefer not to. But gorgeous, gorgeous palette. All of these, I believe, are staying. I don't see myself getting rid of any of these. The Unity palette. This is not their most recent one. They came out with another one, but I wasn't a fan of the color story. It was too chaotic for me. But this is the most recent one that I have. First of all, this lace packaging is absolutely stunning, and this is our beautiful color story. Now, these shimmers in here are just really sparkly. We don't really have flips or anything like that. We don't have a lot of duochromes, multichromes, or holochromes, but the matte formula in here I thought was really nice as well. They were pigmented, very easy to work with, but again, it's the sparkles. The Legend of Ardra palette. This was a limited edition palette that came out this year. I believe it's Star Trek themed. I don't watch Star Trek. I'm not a Trekkie, so to speak. Not that I'm against it. We just didn't grow up watching it, but I do know some of the references. But this one was limited edition. Packaging, 10 out of 10. The most stunning packaging the brand has ever done, and this color story is incredibly beautiful. I think this palette is sold out at this point, and it might come back. You never know. They've been known to bring back discontinued palettes, but this one is so beautiful. Again, the matte formula in here was really nice. I feel like Adept has improved their mattes this year, and they've become a little bit more consistent as far as the quality goes, but I really did love this one. These right here in the middle, they're beautiful on the lid, like, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a huge fan of these sort of tie-dye swirly shades, because once you kind of dip your finger in there or your brush and really get them going, they kind of just turn into one shade. These I feel like are a little bit different because you can kind of dip your shade into like some of these more precise spots and get something a little bit different, but absolutely gorgeous. The Cyborg Choir palette. This one was, I believe, maybe the first one that came out this year, or maybe the second one. The mattes in here were okay. They weren't horrible, but they weren't as good as some of the other ones that we just talked about. But again, it's the shimmers. I love the brightness of this palette. This shade right here is stunning. Put that on your inner corner. Incredibly beautiful. Again, Adept likes to give us very shimmer heavy palettes, so you only get 5 mattes, so there's not a whole lot of variety is what you can do, and there's not a whole lot of depth, but still a stunning palette. maybe this was the first one that came out this year. This is the Flying Fiddles palette. This is the big sister to the Unity palette right here. Same packaging, different colors. So again, you've got the lace, absolutely stunning. Until Legend of Ardra, I thought this was the most beautiful packaging ever. But this is a very neutral leaning palette from the brand, and I thought the mattes in here were, again, really nice. These weren't hard to work with, but they're not the best compared to some other ones. But I just really love that they gave us a more neutral leaning palette with some neutral shimmers in here. Like, look, you can see that shift right here in the mirror with this shade. That really pretty green to pink flip that it has. Stunning, gorgeous. This is a collab that they did with Amy Loves Makeup, and it's a very cool tone palette. I love the packaging, but I will tell you this glitter will get everywhere. It does rub off. It's not gonna come off in like clumps, but if you kind of like scrape over it, you will get some. But it's a very cool tone color story, and I do think it's absolutely beautiful. But these matte shades in here, I have a really hard time with. This one more in particular, it patches on me. I have a really hard time blending it out, and honestly, these three right here, these three matte shades, they all look the same on the lid. There's not a whole lot of variance with them. So the mattes in here are not my absolute favorite, but the shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful. We've got hollow chromes, we've got some beautiful shifty special shades in here, and I do think she did a really good job with the curation of this palette. I just wish the matte formula in here was better and there was more variation between these three matte shades right here. More so these two, they are so incredibly close. Like, even looking at them on camera, there's not much of a difference, but good palette. I do still really enjoy it. The Seahorse palette, y'all, this one I hemmed and hawed over for the longest time because it's got a hefty price tag on it. It's an all shimmer palette, but I have zero regrets other than the fact that this one has now gone on sale several times since I picked it up, but it's beautiful. I love their shimmer formula, and I don't have any mattes in here, so this one makes me very, very happy. Obviously, it's a companion palette, and I really need to reach into this one more than I do because it's stunning. I love the packaging. I love the color story, and it's one of my favorites. But this one right here is my absolute favorite from the brand. This is the Sumerian Sunset palette. Again, it's another Star Trek themed palette. I believe this is a drink, and look at that color story. Oh my gosh, that is fall yumminess in a palette. The mattes in here are some of the best mattes that Adept has ever done. Not the best matte formula ever, but for Adept, they're incredible. And look at all those shifts and beautiful shades in this palette. I just love this one so much. This is kind of one of my go-tos if I want to play with Adept, just because I like the variety of the mattes, I like the variety of the shimmers, I like how I can get something more neutral, something more colorful. The shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful, and it's a favorite of mine. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about my Unearthly. I have a lot of palettes from the brand. They were my absolute favorite for the longest time, and not that they're not a favorite anymore. I have just found other brands that I just love more than I love Unearthly. Not to say there's anything wrong with the quality. It's a personal preference thing, but yeah, let's just kind of jump into this. There's no real eloquent way to go through this. So up first we have the little Spaced Out palette. This one came from last summer's mini mystery box, and look at this color story. It is so cute. It is so fun. I love this shade right here, Cool Beans. It's more so the name than anything, but it's a really fun color story. You can definitely get some really pretty cohesive looks out of it, but for me this is definitely more of a companion palette. I know a lot of people didn't really enjoy the summer mystery boxes last year. I thought they were fun, they were cute, and I really loved the palettes that came in them. The Dreamer palette. This was last year's winter release, and this is a lot of people's favorite from the brand. It's one of my favorites. I just love these cool tones in here with the purples, the pinks. You've got some neutrals in here. I'm not the biggest fan of a gray shade. I'm coming around to them, but they're still not a favorite. But the shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful. They are just stunning. They are shimmery, they are sparkly, they are smooth, and they have a really good formula. The Get Groovy palette. This was the one that came in the large summer mystery box from last year, and this one is like a rainbow palette. This one reminds me of Oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of it. I've always known the name of it, but it's a large rainbow palette they had for the longest time. They discontinued it, and there's talks that it's coming back. I've heard the brand say that they are kind of remastering it and bringing it back, but this one is so pretty. It's a rainbow palette from the brand, kind of with a twist. It's not a true rainbow because you don't have like a red in here, but just really pretty, beautiful quality. Love that palette. We have the Charmer palette. This one was their Valentine's Day release palette for this year. This is really pretty. The color story is a little chaotic for me. Honestly, it's more so like this side of the palette than anything. Actually, it's really kind of sort of the grains, isn't it? But it's still really pretty. I have done several looks with this one. It's just not one that is like an automatic go-to when I think of playing with Unearthly, but I do like the formula. I like the colors in here. I like the shimmers in here, and it's like a 50-50 as far as the mattes and shimmers go. The Unearthly Night Terror palette, obviously it's Unearthly. This one is so good. This one made my top of 2024, and I love the color story. I mean, look at it. It's purple, but again, it's got those blues, that almost kind of pink shade. This is definitely more on the purple side, but like I was saying earlier, it's a color story that we have seen a lot this year, and I like that this one is a very scaled down, more curated color story from the brand. It's not as large as some of these other ones, and we're going to get to some in a minute that are even bigger, but such a good palette. I love this one. The Unearthly Not Normal. This is the original one. I do have the remastered one. In fact, if there's some palettes that you know that I have in my collection that you haven't seen, you will see those at the end of the video because I'm still testing them out and I want to keep everything separated. And those palettes will all be included in next year's palette ranking. But anyways, this is the original Not Normal palette. That is what it looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one because I do have the remastered one. Not that there's anything wrong with this palette. If they hadn't remastered it, I would have held on to it because I love the color story, but all of these mattes are in the new, you know what, let me grab it just so I can show you a comparison. I do have a comparison video on my channel, but I want to show you just in person what I'm talking about, so you will see this palette twice. Alright, so here is the remastered version, and then we have the original version. So you see it has all the same mattes in here from the original one, but they amped up the shimmers in here. So they expanded the color story. I can't remember how many. I have all the details in that video, but they expanded the color story and they improved the shimmers in here as well. It's all the new improved formula. Now there's a couple in here that I like more, but I definitely have them in other places in my collection, so I don't feel like I'm missing out by getting rid of this one, but I definitely don't need both. So I am going to declutter this one. I am going to keep this one, but you'll see it again later on in the video because it's going to go back with my other palettes. Alright, so this one right here is the All I Ever Wanted palette, and this came out this year as a mystery palette from the brand. They do have, I believe, All I Ever Wanted and All I Ever Wanted 2, but those have long been discontinued. So this is like a revamped conglomeration of the two palettes, and it's beautiful. It's an all shimmer palette from the brand, but I was a little disappointed with the shimmer quality in this palette, especially for the price point, because this held a pretty hefty price tag. I think it was like $80 something, and not that there's anything wrong with it. I just know that Unearthly can do better than this shimmer formula. It's not bad, but for their standards, it wasn't impeccable. So I was a little disappointed by it. I still love it. I think it's beautiful. I will still reach for it. I just wish that they had given us something a little bit more, like maybe some shifty shades, some holographic shades, things like that. I mean, there are some holochromes in here, but I wish that they had just gone like a step above this one. The Devour palette. This was last year's Christmas release or holiday release, and this color story is no, not holiday release. This was last year's Halloween release, but I always think it's a holiday release because it's pretty much red and green, and I open this one and I always think of that. But this one was one that I wasn't too fond of until I used it in a Throwback Thursday very recently, and I fell in love with the color story in here. I did something so fun, so colorful, and it's just a stunning palette. The shimmers are in here are incredibly gorgeous. The matte formula is insanely beautiful. I do wish we had a little bit more depth in this palette, but I can make it work. The Sorcerer's Smoke. This one came out last year, and this is a neutral palette for the brand, and it's one of my favorites. I love the tones in here. I love the neutrality of here, but it's still a little bit more on the colorful side. It's not just a brown palette, and the shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful as well. the High Temp palette. This was a summer release from the brand, and this one is so beautiful. I love the mix of the warm tones and the cool tones in here. It's a very matte heavy palette, but you've still got 4 beautiful shimmers, and this red is so insanely beautiful on the lid, and this row down here, just this row together, makes the most beautiful sort of neutral kind of mauvey leaning look. Stunning palette. The Strawberry Milkshake palette. This is an old one from the brand, and it is so gorgeous. I love the vibrancy of this palette. I love the shimmers in here. This is their older shimmer formula, so it's not going to be quite as impactful as some of the newer releases, but it's still a beautiful palette. It has those large pans in it, and I really enjoy that one, especially more so in the summer. The Lure palette. This is a lot of people's absolute favorite from the brand, and it's beautiful. I do love the color story. I love these small, more curated color stories. I really love like a 9 pan. I think a 9 pan is like my absolute sweet spot, but as much as I love this one, I do think it's beautiful, but it's not my absolute favorite from the brand. You'll see my favorite one in just a little bit, and if you watch my channel, you already know exactly what palette that is, but stunning, beautiful color story. The Daily Grind palette. I actually like this one more than Lure. I think it's so fun. I love the oranges with the pop of green in here. The shimmers are beautiful. Again, this is their older formula. We're really getting into their older formula down here, except for these back here, but still absolutely beautiful, and I find this one to be really fun. This one pairs really nicely with the Lure palette, actually. The Dead of Night palette. This is a favorite kind of purple palette in my collection. I just love the matte formula. I love the shimmers in here. I love the pops of green. We do have a gray up here, which isn't my favorite. It's sort of like a matte with sparkles, but I don't get a whole lot of use out of that one, but beautiful, beautiful color story. The Heather Austin Resurgence palette. This is the one that Heather Austin obviously did in collaboration with the brand last summer, and look at how fun this palette is. It is so insanely beautiful. I need to pull this one out and play with it more. She did such a good job with the formula and the curation of the mattes with the shimmers in here. You can 100% mix and match, kind of create your own shades and things like that. Like you can mix the red and the blue and get a purple. Very fun palette, beautiful job, and I love the cover art on this one. Fall Magic. This is my absolute favorite palette from the brand, hands down, no questions asked, and it's their old formula. The shimmers in here I think are absolutely beautiful. Are they as good as what the brand has now? No, but I've said several times I don't need something to be super flippy and super sparkly to make a beautiful look. I just want it to be reflective, smooth, and look pretty on the eye, but there's something about this color story that just draws me in every single time I open it. It will never go anywhere. I didn't pick up the remastered one because I was so disappointed with how she changed the color story. It's a personal preference thing. It's me being a little bit on the salty side, but I just love these more muted, grungy fall tones in here, and the shimmers are so beautiful. We do have some really pretty sort of shifty shades in here. I don't know if the camera is going to pick them up, but I just love this one. This shade Change right here is probably my favorite shimmer in this palette. It is stunning. I wish she had done with this one kind of what she had done with the Not Normal palette. Like bring us the same color story, expand it, and improve the shimmer formula. But instead she kind of remastered the whole thing, which it's fine. It's her braid. It's not my business, but just my personal opinion. But she didn't ask for it. Okay, we had the Gargoyle palette. This was another spooky release from the brand this year. This is a very cool tone palette, and it's beautiful. It's very well done. I'm not the biggest fan of cool tones. I'm definitely coming around to them a little bit more, but I like these cool tones more so than just like grays and things like that. Very pretty, very well curated. Again, beautiful mattes, beautiful shimmers. We've got some really pretty like sort of special shifty sparkle shades in here. Very well done. And the last one we have is going to be the Spring Magic palette. This one came out earlier this year, and I was so excited to see that we were getting a Spring Magic to go with Fall Magic. And this one does not disappoint. It is so beautiful. It is bright. It is a little bit more muted, but it is very springy leaning. I love the blues, the greens, these sort of pinks down here. To me, again, this is a little bit more of a neutral leaning palette with some pops of color in it. I've really enjoyed the looks that I've created with this one. I will say though, just looking at these down here in the palette, they do look very much so the same. I don't know how same they look on camera, but they are are very different. It's all the shifts that they have going with them, but I do wish we had just a little bit more variety as far as these shimmers right here go, like maybe something a little bit deeper, something a little bit lighter, just a little bit more variance, but still an absolutely beautiful palette. Alright, let's go into all of my Nomad palettes. So again, this is an absolute top 5 favorite brand of mine. I fell in love with them about 2 years ago at this point, and it's a brand that I buy everything they release at this point. I just absolutely love the theming, the packaging, the fact that they are a travel-friendly brand, or not travel-friendly, but they are a travel-themed brand, and they always have a charity that they give back to with every single release, and I just really appreciate that. But let's go ahead and dive into these because we've got quite a few of them sitting right here. So up first we have all of their Air Travel palettes, and this is the first one that they came out with, and they came out with these 3 earlier this year, and honestly, I probably should not have picked these up. It was like a collector's mentality type thing, but I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter these. Maybe not this one. This one is my favorite. I do think this one is really well done. It's not the best formula they've ever done, but I just like how I can get a really simple, quick, easy look from this one. And it's from an indie brand. You don't get a lot of these kind of color stories from indie brands. So I am going to keep this one, but I think these 3, I'm going to go ahead and declutter. They weren't my favorites. I'm not going to reach for them outside of the video that I already made. So I do have a reference point if I need it in the future, but this was the Abu Dhabi one, and it was my favorite out of all of them because it's more of like warm tone neutrals, but you do have 4 mattes, you have 2 shimmers, and I wish there was a little bit more depth in this palette, so it's not a perfect color story of mine. Very pretty. Somebody else will absolutely love it, so that one's gonna go. The Oslo Mower, what is it? Oslo Garter Moen palette. This is cool tone neutrals, and I'm not a huge cool tone fan, so not my favorite one. I have other cool tone neutral palettes in my collection if I want something like this that I'm going to reach for. Still very pretty, but I'm going to get rid of it. And then this one was my least favorite, and it's more so the undertones in here. These just aren't the sort of greens that I reach for. They're just, I don't know, there's something about the undertones in here that I find it difficult to create a cohesive look with, and they just don't look good on my like cool undertones. So again, that one is going to go, but I believe the rest of these are going to stay. So let's start with these bigger palettes back here, and then we will move in to the smaller ones. So the first one that we have is the Keys Beachy and Peachy palette. This one came out this summer, and this is so pretty. This is pretty much a like pastel rainbow palette. You do have some depth in here. You've got some beautiful shimmers in here. It is very blue heavy, but honestly, it's the way that this palette is laid out. It looks a little chaotic, but if you really kind of look at it, you've got your red, your orange, your yellow, your greens, your blues, and your purples, and some beautiful shimmers in between. I think they did a really good job with this one. I love the packaging, and that one's gonna stay. All of these are gonna stay, honestly. The Nomad Ireland Wild Atlantic Way palette. I love this one. I was so excited when they were doing Ireland because I am about half Irish, maybe a little bit more, but very heavy on the Irish, and this is beautiful. This is a monochromatic green palette done right, but you've got some pops of blues, you've got some pops of like warm tone neutrals in here. I love the gold and the copper in here. This is a stunning palette. When I first tried it, I wasn't too crazy of the color story, but as I've come around for greens, I've definitely wanted to reach into this one more, and it's got such a beautiful packaging. If you look at it, you can see like the little clovers kind of etched into like the velvety background. This almost feels like I can't think of the word, but you know what's on a pool table? That's what this feels like. I can't think of the word. The Haunted Europe palette. I don't know why this one is still in the packaging, but this is one that I missed out on when it first came out, and it was like my unicorn palette from the brand. It's got that lenticular motion on the front, like can you see? I don't know if it's going to pick it up, but this is a gorgeous color story, and they re-released it this year for spooky season. They didn't reformulate or anything like that, so it's the same formula that they had when they first released it. I love this color story. The quality in here may not be nearly as good as what they're giving us now, but it's still a beautiful palette. I am so happy to have it. I love the looks that I've created with it, and it's just so fun and beautiful. And then we have last year's spooky season release from the brand. This is the Ghost Town USA palette. And first of all, you got the lenticular motion packaging again. And the color story in here is beautiful. This is a lot of people's absolute favorite. And I get it. It's very neutral leaning. The quality in here is incredible. The shimmers are so beautiful. And I love the sort of mix of the cool tones and the warm tones. You definitely have some more warm leaning shimmers over here. The greens are beautiful. The blues are beautiful. This is laid out where you can really kind of go by column and get a look, or of course you can mix and match. Gorgeous palette, gorgeous theme, love that one. The Nomad Bosque de Mozo de Monteverde Cloud Forest palette. I'm sure I butchered that, I apologize, but this one is beautiful. First of all, the little sloth right there, I love sloths, they're one of my favorite animals, but this is a beautiful green heavy rainbow palette, one of my favorite rainbow palettes in my collection. The only thing that I wish they had done differently with this one, and I understand why they didn't, but I wish we had more variation as far as the shimmers go, because they are all very green leaning shimmers with the exception of these two right here. So when I go to create a look with just this palette, I kind of struggle when it comes to the shimmers because they are all so green. So I feel like every single look I create has to have a pop of green in it, and not my absolute favorite. So I definitely like bringing in other things when I use this palette, but it's supposed to be like the greens of the forest with the pops of colors that you see in the animals and the natures and things like that. And they did such a gorgeous job with this one. I really do enjoy it. Then we have the Verona Amor y Muerte palette. This is Love and Death. It's their Romeo and Juliet theme palette from Valentine's Day, I believe last year. This is very pretty, but it's not my favorite. I find this side over here to be very repetitive as far as the mattes go. Like these three right here all look pretty much the same on the palette. Or on the eye. I wish we had a little bit more variance as far as the matte shades in here go. This side I think is beautiful. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of cool tones, I definitely like this side better. But of course, you can mix and match and get some absolutely beautiful looks with this one. The first one that I got, the shimmers in here were extremely hard panned, and the brand did come out and say they had some quality issues, so I reached out and they sent me a new one, and these are much better. They're still not as good as what they have now, but they definitely perform. I can pick them up, they work nicely on the eye, but as beautiful as it is, it's just not my absolute favorite from the brand, but it's going to stay because I love Nomad. All right, we have the smaller ones from the brand, and the first one that we have is my new absolute favorite from the brand, and it's the Nomad Chicago Speakeasy palette. Y'all, first of all, that Great Gatsby packaging, love it, but look at this color story in here. Oh my gosh, it is everything I want in a palette. Like, to me, this is the perfect color story because you have all of these warm tone neutrals over here, you have all of your purples over here, and then you have your pops of greens in the middle to give that sort of lime green chartreusey pop on the inner corner that I absolutely love. Very well done. Gorgeous color story. Beautiful shimmers in here. These are some of the best shimmers I think the brand has ever done. And these are all duochromes in the middle. I will say that all of them are not as shifty as you want them to be. This one right here I don't find has like a super strong shift compared to some of the others. I don't think the mirror is going to pick up all of those shifts. You can see some of them, especially with this one right here, but such a gorgeous, gorgeous palette. Then we have the Fuji 5 Legs palette. This one has my favorite packaging of all time out of anything in my entire collection. This is raised like a painting you would find in a museum. I don't know how they did it. I don't really care how they did it because it's absolutely stunning, and the color story in here is just as beautiful. Look at that. Oh my gosh, the cool tones, the warm tones, the yellows, the sort of tealy blue shades. Absolutely gorgeous. Again, quality in here is incredible. Nomad really did that thing this year, and they brought us so many palettes. They brought us more than they usually do. I can't remember how many it was. Like 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I can't even keep track. Maybe 6 palettes or more than that at this point, but absolutely stunning palette. Then we have the Whistler Snow Lodge palette, one of my favorites. It's a favorite winter palette of mine. You can't get this one anymore, but it is so, so beautiful. Again, warm tones, cool tones, but the tones that I like to reach for. You've got the blues, you've got the greens, the beautiful gold, the reds. You've got a lot of depth in here. Stunning color story. The New Zealand Stargazing palette. This one was my top favorite until the Speakeasy palette came out, and this one is just so beautiful. Like, look at this one. Oh my god, and look at those shifts. You can see those shifts in the mirror. This one, I think they captured like space so well. The colors that you're gonna get, I love the pinks with the purples. This was like the first palette that came out this year with this sort of color story, and then I feel like everything just kind of escalated from there. But I really do enjoy this one. I do wish that we had maybe a lighter matte shade in here, like maybe one of these went just a little bit lighter than they do, but I can get some beautiful cohesive looks with this one. And I love the color story. I love the quality. I love those flippy duochromes and multichromes in here. And this one is absolutely stunning. Plus that packaging is gorgeous. The Royal Europe palette. This one is beautiful. It was the first time that the brand brought us multichromes. You can see all those shifts on the bottom row. But this one is very mid-tone to deep. And for my fair skin, I have a really hard time creating looks using only this palette. I can do it with this row right here and this one right here. But everything else, I need to bring in something from another palette. So I like to bring in some of my pastels and things like that. But this one is absolutely gorgeous. And this was my favorite packaging until, again, Chicago's Speakeasy came out. They just nailed it with that one. But stunning, stunning palette. The multichromes in here are so incredibly beautiful. And the last one that I have is the Okavango Safari palette, and this one is so beautiful. First of all, the packaging is gorgeous. This is sort of like that velvety kind of fur feeling packaging. Color story in here is beautiful. This one came out around the same time as the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, but yeah, absolutely love the color story in here. The shimmers are a little hard pressed, so they're not my absolute favorite. They can definitely be worked with, but gorgeous color story. Alright, so up next we have all of my Ensley Reign palettes, and I do really enjoy Ensley Reign. I think they have an incredible formula, especially their mattes. They do like to give us a lot of more chunky shimmer shades, which are not my favorite, but their matte formula is incredible. But up first we have the Flutter palette. This was one of two smaller palettes that they brought us, I think around the summertime, and this one is so beautiful, but I find the color story to be a little difficult for me to create like an all-in-one cohesive look with. I just really struggle with it, not because of the performance, but it's just the shade selection in here. Like outside of this down here, I get kind of jumbled up as to where to go from there. So for me, I have to bring in something else, but still a beautiful palette. We have the Flourish palette, and this one, oh my god, look at those beautiful neons in here. This one is so stunning. This one actually does pair beautifully with this palette over here, but this one was my favorite of the two. I just love the vibrancy of the neons. The shimmers in here are absolutely beautiful, and we got a little bit of depth in this one as well. The Cold Moon palette. This is a lot of people's favorite palette, and it's absolutely beautiful. It is a very cool tone leaning palette. You do have like some pops of warm tones in here, but it is absolutely beautiful. I do really enjoy this palette, but it's not an absolute favorite of mine from the brand because these are just the shades that I don't really reach for all that often, but I do really like it. But the Groovy Garden palette, this one is stunning. I love the shades in here. This one is giving me like 70s vibes. I love these more kind of murky greens and oranges that they have in here. The shimmers are incredibly beautiful in here. This one is definitely a little bit more chunky than what I prefer. This one's a little bit on the chunkier side, but it's smooth enough that it's doable, but the rest of these are just absolutely smooth and beautiful. I love the depth that you get in this palette, and I love the variety. The Twisted Tea Party palette, I picked this one up later this year because it had been on my wish list and I finally just did it. And then of course it went on sale not too long after that. But this one is so incredibly beautiful. I love the shade selection here. The shimmers in here are absolutely stunning. I have not played with everything in this palette yet just because it didn't come out this year. I just kind of bought it for me to play with. And I think this one went in a Throwback Thursday, but gorgeous color story. My favorite from the brand still to date, this is my absolute favorite. This is the Lands of Enchantment palette. This was last year's winter release from the brand, And look at that. Oh my gosh. Remember whenever I said that the Winter Wonderland palette from Cosmic Beauty had my sort of tones in it? This one does as well. It's a very pastel leaning palette, but I love that you have the depth in here. You've got mid-tones, you've got deep tones, you've got beautiful shimmers in this palette. I really love the variety. Yes, it's on the larger side, but it is very well curated. Like, there's not anything that I can look in here and be like, oh, we could have done without that. We could have done with that. This palette, every shade has a place, but stunning. Love that one. And the last one I have is the Cosmic Dreamer palette, and I just love this one. First of all, this is Pink Floyd inspired, and I love Pink Floyd. Like, one of my brothers listened to it all the time when I was a kid, so I absolutely love it. Dark Side of the Moon is an incredible album, but this color story is gorgeous. I do believe this is a remastered palette. I don't know what the original one looked like, but I just think this one is really beautiful. You've got a lot of like murky neutral shades in here with some pops of color. I think it really encaptures what they were going for, and personally I love this color story. I know not everybody did, but for me, stunning, incredible. Alright, so up next we have all of my Bella Beauty Bar palettes, and I absolutely love and adore Bella Beauty Bar. They're one of my top 5 favorite brands, and they have been for a while. They have such an incredible matte formula, but let me just say, they have come out with so many palettes this year. It's been really hard to keep up, and at this point I've kind of given up and just decided that I'm going to get the ones that really resonate with me. I don't need to have every single palette if it's a favorite brand. That doesn't mean I have to have them all, but let's run through the ones that I do have. So the first one is going to be Strange and Unusual. This is my first palette from the brand and the one that made me fall in love with them. This is the older formula, but I still think it's absolutely beautiful. I don't have any issues with it. They have improved, but not enough that I feel like I need to run out and repurchase this palette, if that makes sense. But look at this. Oh my gosh, it's Beetlejuice themed. I love the shades in here. I love the shimmers in here. This shade right here has my name written all over it. We have this beautiful sort of iridescent shifty shade over here. Just very well done. Love this palette. The Angles of Illumination palette. This one is an all shimmer palette. They've had other ones in the past, but this one is so beautiful. It is very like blue and teal heavy, but still absolutely gorgeous. This was the original one that they came out with, and I think it was these two shades right here they said were too similar for what they had planned. So they put this one on sale, and once this one was gone, they brought in the new one with the new shade. So there might be somebody else that has one of these changed out, but beautiful all shimmer palette. These are all magnetic, so you can pop them out, move them around. I may bring this in for like my BYOPs and things like that I start to do next year, but absolutely stunning. Did I need this one? No, but I have it. The Dead Roses palette. This was like a Valentine's Day release earlier this year, and this one is so incredibly beautiful. It is pink, it is red, it is purple, and I love it. The shimmers in here are incredible. I was not going to pick up this palette because I was like, I have those shades, but this shade right here is the one that did it for me. It is like this most beautiful sort of shifty like green to red shade. Incredibly beautiful. Love that palette. The Sun and the Sea palette. This was one that if I was going to declutter from Bella Beauty Bar, it would probably be this one, and maybe eventually it will go, but I'm not ready to. I love the packaging. I think it's beautiful, and the color story in here is really pretty, but we did not need 4 shades of the same brown, just a little bit of variation. Like, we definitely could have brought in something else, but the blues in here are beautiful. You have a pop of purple, and the shimmers in here are incredible, and I do like creating very neutral leaning looks with this palette and doing maybe a pop with one of these shimmers, but if these had been different up here, these 4 brown shades, this would have been an incredible palette. Like, maybe get rid of these 2 and then deepen up this one, and then give us maybe some more purples or maybe like a pop of green or something like that. It would have been the perfect palette, but it's still beautiful and it's gonna stay. The Melted Mattes palette. This is an all matte palette that they came out with this summer. They also came out with like a small little multi-chrome palette, which I did not pick up. It was a very expensive palette, but this is beautiful. You've got all of your neutral shades up here, like every neutral you could ever need, and then you have these beautiful neons down here, and I don't reach for an all matte palette very often, but I just thought this would be a really good one to kind of have sitting at my desk to reach into if I need a white, or if I need a black, or if I need like a certain blending standing out shade, or if I want to add like a pop of a neon to a look or something like that. But this is beautiful. The formula is incredible, and I do really enjoy this one. The Poison Garden palette. This one ranked very high in my ranking this year, and look at that color story. Oh my gosh, it is grungy goodness. You've got cool tones, you've got warm tones. I love this little corner over here, although I do love this quad right here as well. This blue, absolutely stunning. Love that palette. Vamp was this year's spooky season release. So is this one as well, but this one came out closer to Halloween. And this one is beautiful, but it's not a favorite of mine. And this was the palette that kind of made me realize you don't need to pick up everything. Like, honestly, I shouldn't have picked this one up because it's not a favorite color story of mine. It is absolutely beautiful. These reds are incredibly stunning. But as I said in my review, I feel like this palette is missing something. Every time I go to create a look, I feel like there's just something that this palette needs that it doesn't have. Like if I do the purples, there's like something I'm missing. Same with the reds, same with the blues. I feel like it doesn't quite have that depth in here that I want with the mattes, although the formula is incredible, and again, the shimmers are impeccable. It's not an absolute favorite of mine. The Ultraviolet palette, however, has my name written all over it, although technically it has Deandra Nicole's name written all over it. But this one is beautiful. It's a monochromatic purple palette, but you've got cool tone purples, you've got warm tone purples, you've got depth, you've got lightness, you've got beautiful shimmers in here. You're going to get a purple look with this palette no matter what, but I like the variety of this one, and it's a favorite of mine. I can't help it. I am who I am. Pastel Garden. I bought this one later after I hemmed and hawed. I wish I had the original packaging because I like that sort of lilac-y pink packaging way better than this one. This one just, it drives me bonkers because it just doesn't match the palette. But oh my gosh, it is all pastels. It is huge. We didn't need every single shade in here, but I have every pastel I could possibly want, and that was part of the reason I wanted this one. I wanted this to be my ultimate companion palette, and it absolutely is. But again, I need to reach into this more. I definitely want to get a lot more use out of my palettes this year. I know I have more than anybody could possibly use in a year. Like, I could use a different palette every single day. I get it, but stunning, stunning palette, and it makes me happy. I love it. The Secret Garden palette. This one is so beautiful. It came out this year, and look at this one. Oh my gosh, it is pink and it is green. We've got some neutrals up here. The shimmers are incredible. I love the tones in here. Again, I definitely think it could have been curated down just a little bit with the greens and maybe brought in a little something else to this palette, like maybe a yellow or something like that, but still absolutely stunning. The Best Mattes palette. This is another one that I bought with the intention of it being like the ultimate companion palette, every matte you'll ever need, but here I am buying more mattes, and this is beautiful. The quality in here is incredible. I did restore mine to like its original color story just because it was driving me a little bonkers the way that I had it set up, but it's still beautiful. I love this palette. It's another one I need to reach into more, and it's another one that will probably come out when I start doing my BYOPs and things like that, just because I don't have a ton of matte single shades in my collection. I have more so matte shimmer shades, but so beautiful. We have some really pretty neons in here, and honestly, when I did a neon comparison with the Melted Mattes palette, I didn't even think to pull this one out. My mind didn't even go there as far as neons go, but look, you definitely have some beautiful neons in this palette, but stunning. And then we have these two right here that I feel like really did something last year. We have the Recently De-Influenced and the Basic Witch. Both of these came out last year for spooky season, and people went insane over these, and rightfully so because they're gorgeous. Recently De-Influenced is so pretty. I love the warm tones in here with like the pop of green. The shimmers are incredibly beautiful. I do wish we had a little bit more variance as far as the mattes over here go. Like maybe we could have done something just a little bit different. I feel like this could have gone a little bit lighter as well, but it is still absolutely beautiful. But my favorite of the two that came out last year is Basic Witch, and we're not surprised. I mean, look at the color story with the pinks and the purples, and you've got some pops of grungier tones in here with the green and the orange. You've got lots of depth in here. You've got beautiful shimmers in here. This one is very matte heavy, and I do really appreciate that. I prefer a more matte heavy palette. I don't want it to be like 12 mattes and one shimmer, but I definitely like the ratio of this one. I think it's so beautiful, and this is another top favorite of mine from the brand. All right, all of my Blend Bunny palettes, and Blend Bunny is another indie brand with an incredible matte formula. Like, they're just so effortless and easy to work with, and I do really love the brand, but I have to say I've been a little disappointed with their releases this year. They did a lot of collabs, which I'm very proud and happy for the creators that they got to work with somebody they love, but I felt like all the palettes kind of ran the same. They were all essentially a very rainbow leaning palette, but let's go ahead and jump into this. So the first one we have is the Lunar palette, and I think this is still my absolute favorite one to date. I love the shades in here. Again, I've talked about it. These are the kind of shades that I absolutely love. The matte formula is impeccable. The shimmers in here are incredible, and you have a beautiful multi-chrome up here. I love that one. The Longing palette is one that she did come out with this year that she did curate on her own, and this one is a beautiful cool tone palette. Not my favorite palette. I feel like it could have been curated down just a little bit more. Like, I don't know if we needed all of these greens and all of these browns. Like, you could have done something similar to the purples and the grays over here, but it is what it is. It's still a beautiful palette, and this is a lot of people's favorite, and for good reason. It's a stunning one. And then of course we have the Blends palette. I mean, need I say more? It's a rainbow matte palette. You've got neutrals down here. You've got all of your primary colors you could possibly want. And this is a beautiful like staple in my collection. The Surge palette. Oh my gosh, I was so glad that I picked this one up because I kind of, again, hemmed and hawed over it for a long time, and when I found out she was discontinuing it, I snagged it up because I just love this color story. I love the bright neons down here. You've got some really deep grungy tones, mid-tones, light tones. The shimmers in here are okay. They're not my absolute favorites, but they do look really pretty on the lid. They go really nicely with the palette, and I just love this one so much, but you can't get that one anymore. Another one that sadly you can't get is the Sugar and Grunge palette. Somebody decided they own the word grunge and was like suing the brand. It was ridiculous, but look at this. Oh my gosh. If you were a child of the 90s, this palette is pure nostalgia. I absolutely love it. I mean, you got Teen Spirit, Baggy Jeans, Detention, Mixtape, 1995, Ironic. I mean, stunning. I love the colors in here. I love the way that it's set up. It's a little jumbled up with the shimmers down here, but gorgeous palette. I'm hoping she brings that one back under a different name, and I know she's kind of mentioned that. The Machina palette. This was one that she did with her dad, who has since passed, and it came out last year. I skipped out on it, but then I purchased it this year, and I'm so glad I did because this one is insanely beautiful. I love how you have like this bright, vibrant side over here, and then you have this deeper, more muted, kind of desaturated side. The shimmers in here are incredible. The mattes are incredible. This row is so beautiful. The purple row I feel like could have been a little bit more... There could have been a little bit more variation, like maybe make this one a little bit darker because these two are very similar, but overall stunning palette. The Sickly Sweet palette, this was their spooky season release from last year, 2023, and this one kind of shocked everybody because it is a pastel palette. And another thing that kind of got everybody all up in their feelings is the fact that she jumbled up the shimmers throughout, and she said it was supposed to be like candy with the sprinkles sprinkled in it, and I get it. I definitely see it. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm gonna do what I want anyway. It was just a little off-brand for the brand, but I love that she tried something new, and this is a beautiful pastel palette because it has so much depth in it. It's got just everything you could possibly need. Honestly, I think this one gives Bella Beauty Bar a run for its money as far as best pastel palette in my collection, but I love that one. And then we have this monstrosity of a palette right here. This is the one that they did in collaboration with Ellis Atlantis, who is a drag queen, and packaging is beautiful, but this is a massive rainbow palette, and this is one I have regrets purchasing this one. I really bought into the hype, and I had the mindset of I need to review everything. I need to have a video with everything, and I don't reach for this. I'm not going to reach for it because it's overwhelming. I have the Blends palette. I have the Best Mattes palette from Bella Beauty Bar, and the shimmers in here are beautiful, and the matte formula is stunning. Like, there's nothing wrong as far as quality goes. I just don't see a vision with this palette. I feel like every single shade was picked out, thrown in a palette, and they said, here you go. I don't see where there's any creativity behind it, and I know that's a little harsh, but it's how I feel. And yeah, if you are somebody who does a lot of stage makeup and you do drag makeup like Ellis Alanis does, this is going to be your go-to palette. But for someone like me, this is just not a perfect palette. So I am actually going to declutter this one. I'm not going to reach for it. It's massive. It takes up a lot of space and I just don't need it. Moving on, we have all of my Odin's eye palettes, and this was a favorite brand of mine for a really long time, and I've noticed that the quality has sort of fallen off. The color stories don't resonate with me quite as much, and I'm starting to get some quality issues with some of my palettes, so it's a little irritating because these aren't insanely old. The oldest one I have in my collection is the original Hella palette, and the rest of these are, I mean, maybe 2 years old at most, and I know that's like past the expiration point, but I have palettes that are way older than that in my collection and still perform pretty much the way they did when I bought them. So it's a brand that I still like and I still enjoy and I will still purchase if the right thing comes out, but it's not one that I get as excited over anymore, and that's just, it's disappointing, but it is what it is. But let's go ahead and run through these. So let's start with the ones that are right here on top, and I can't remember what the name of this collection was. I think it was Planet Spirit. No, Planet Spirit's right here. Perfect World Collection, maybe that's what it was. I don't know, but this was a collaboration with 3 different creators. We have Makeup Just for Fun, Lauren May Beauty, and Betty Jean, and I love all 3 of them, and these palettes are gorgeous. So the first one is the Flora Story palette from Makeup Just for Fun. Like, look at that. It is a Colorful Lovers neutral palette. I love the purples with the greens in here. The shimmers are absolutely beautiful. You can do something colorful, something more neutral. This was a lot of people's favorite from this collection. My favorite one actually ended up turning out to be the Sea Talk palette with Lauren May Beauty, and this one is just, it's incredibly stunning. This Chartreuse shade right here, Electric Kelp, absolutely gorgeous. But you've got like a blue quad, a neutral quad, your pops in the center. She did a gorgeous job with this one. And then we have the Planet Spirit palette with Betty Jean, and this one is so fun, so bright, vibrant, some neon shades. I love how you got it set up sort of in duos, but you can absolutely kind of mix and match and do your thing. I really like using these bottom 3 matte shades and then throwing like this one in the inner corner and this one all over the lid. It just makes a really pretty look, but I do really enjoy that one. Let's go into this little collaboration right here. So these are the 3 that came out this year, and these were the something diverse series. I can't think of exactly what it was called, but this is like round 2 of a collaboration with these 3. I never got round 1, and I'm disappointed that I didn't because they were absolutely beautiful. But you're going to have Tina the Fancy Face, Judy, and Annette's Makeup Corner, and these are beautiful, beautiful palettes. So my favorite one out of the 3 is the Earthwood palette from Tina the Fancy Face. I just love this color story. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think she captured what she was going for beautifully, and this shade right here is stunning on the inner corner. Then we have the Mighty Monster palette from Annette's Makeup Corner. Gorgeous. You've got some primary colors in here, some pops of neutrals, beautiful shimmers. Not my favorite color story, but I do think it's a lot of fun and I do enjoy it. And then we have the Spring Dragon palette from Judy, and I love that she's stuck with the dragon theme, but she brought us a very pastel palette, and this is the only pastel palette I have from the brand, and I love that she gave us this brown shade down here to deepen up your looks. For me, this is going to be a companion palette. There's not enough depth in here for what I prefer from a look, but it is absolutely gorgeous. Then we have the Solmane 2 palette. This is the Moon Wish palette. This one came out earlier this year, and I love this color story. Like, oh my gosh. Again, with the purples, the blues, the pinks, you do have some pops of neutrals in here. It looks like I'm getting a little bit of hard pan in here, and this palette is not very old. Like, look at that shade right there. Y'all, I wonder if my shimmers are drying out. My shimmers don't feel like they're drying out. I don't want to do any swatches because we'll be here for like days if we swatch all of these, but I'm keeping my eye on these. But this is beautiful. I love the color story in here. The quality was good in this one. It wasn't as good as what I have in some of these other palettes, but it was really nice. We had the Jewels and Gem palette. They also came out with the Rock and Stone palette at the same time. I never picked that one up. I had intended on eventually picking it up, but now I don't think I'm going to. But this is a beautiful cool tone color story. You've got the blues, you've got the pinks. That is shimmer in that shade. That is not mold or anything like that. No, yeah, it's just a little bit of shimmer, but this one is beautiful. Everything feels like it's still fine in this one. I don't know. It's weird. I know a lot of people said that they were getting dried out shimmers in this palette as well. Maybe it's because I live in a really humid climate. I don't know, but beautiful color story. Do really enjoy that one. Let's go into these right here from Angelica Nyqvist collabs that she did, and then we'll go into the holiday palette. So the first one that she ever did was the Hella palette, and this one is so pretty. This was my first Odin's Eye palette, and I just love this one. I absolutely love the color story. I love the shimmers in here. Mine is still like, it still feels like it's gonna perform just fine. I don't see any hard pan, but this is their older formula, so I don't know, maybe there's something to the newer formulas, but I love the combination of the pinks and the greens and like these sort of grungy yellow tones in here. You can do something very fun and colorful. You can do something very muted and neutral, but unfortunately you can't get that one anymore. I do still think these two are available though. So these are the ones that she did last year for spooky season. She did the Trick or Treat palette and the little Ghost palette. These are the Halloween palettes. I love it. I think it's so cute. But first we have Trick or Treat, and this is like a quintessential fall or spooky season palette. I love the shade selection in here. I like the mattes that she chose. I do feel like we could have had a little bit more variety with these two right here, but it works. It is what it is. It does the thing it's supposed to do. Shimmers are stunning in this one as well. And then we have the little Ghost palette, and I think this color story is so fun. I do really enjoy this one. I go back and forth as to which one I love more. I think it depends on the mood, because this shade right here is so beautiful. Banana Taffy, I absolutely love it. And this really pretty sort of lavender shade is so lightly pigmented that it just adds a beautiful wash of color, but it's like the perfect inner corner shade. The blues, the purples, love that one. And then we have 4 of my 6 holiday palettes. You'll see the other ones later on because I'm not done testing them. But we have the Merry Christmas palette. These were the first 2 that came out this year. I feel like I've repeated this several times, so I'm not going to stay too long on it, but gorgeous, gorgeous color story. This was the one where I used, is this the one? Maybe this isn't the one. There was one of these palettes where I used a dark shade, and it just, I had a really hard time blending it out, and that was when I started to notice the quality kind of going south. But this is beautiful. I love the color story in here. And then we have the Christmas Eve palette, which is most people's favorite of the 2. It's definitely a favorite of mine of the 2. It is just so beautiful. It was this one. It was Night Sky. This was the shade that I used, and I had a really hard time getting this to go on my lid and like adhere. It kept wanting to kind of pull away and not really stick. And yeah, it was a little bit disappointing, but I love the color story in here. It is stunning. And then we have the 2 from last year. They came out with Hey Reindeer and Snow Dream. Snow Dream was my favorite of the 2. I just love this sort of vintage vibe that this color story gets. This one I think is still fine. I didn't have any performance issues with the shades that I used in this one. It's only a year old at this point. These 2 are like 2 years old at this point. But beautiful color story. Absolutely love it. And then we have the Hey Reindeer palette, which is more of a pastel leaning palette. You have a lot of depth in this one, which I really appreciate compared to the one that they came out with this year. But I do think this is a really pretty color story. I like the selection. Once again, this one's a little bit more shimmer heavy, but I do think it's absolutely beautiful and I really enjoy it. So all of my Odin's Eye are going to stay for now. These are not going to go anywhere. And then we're going to get into my Fantasy Cosmetica palette. So let me push these out of the way. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with their little 9-pan palettes, and then we'll jump into these over here because they brought us some different palettes this year. So the first one that we have is the Wizard palette. This one did come out earlier this year, and the color story in here is beautiful. I love the blues and the purples with the pops of yellows in here. The matte formula in here was not the best. There's a Katie hair right here. Yep, we gotta love it when there's a Katie hair in a palette. There we go. Got it out of there. Okay, squirrel moment. Anyways, the matte formula in here was not the absolute best from the brand. I do think that they've done better. They're not impossible to work with. I just have other mattes from the brand that I enjoy more than these. This is a beautiful sort of holochrome shade. I love the shimmers in here. Fantasy Cosmetica has an incredible shimmer formula, and they are a favorite brand of mine. They're not a top 5, but they're definitely one that I feel like they are approaching that top 5 spot, especially with one palette that they released this year. But this one is beautiful. Then we have the Rogue palette. This has been a favorite of mine for such a long time. I love the tones in here. There is something about the matte selection in this palette that just makes me so happy. It is grungy. It is definitely deeper, but you've got some variation as far as depth goes in this palette. You've got this black shade deepen everything up. So you can do a look with these two. You can do a look with these two. Even these two are beautiful together. These two, I love the variety in this palette. And again, the shimmers are stunning. The Fighter palette. This one is beautiful. This is a cool tone neutral palette. I love this one. This is like a neutral palette that I can see, or I do reach for quite a lot, and I could see myself, if I didn't have a large collection, I could see this being a staple in my collection. That's what I was getting to. Shimmers are beautiful. It is very shimmer heavy, but a gorgeous, gorgeous color story. Warlock is so fun, so bright, colorful. Again, the mattes in here are not my absolute favorite. I did find them to be a little bit more difficult to work with, but not impossible at all. The shimmers are beautiful. I like that this one is matte heavy, and this green right here is absolutely beautiful. Druid. I think this was the first palette they ever came out with, and this is a lot of people's absolute favorite, and you can see why. This is definitely more neutral for the colorful lover, but it's got those greens in here. It's got these really pretty warm tone browns. The shimmers are in here are incredibly beautiful, and I do really enjoy it, but it's not my personal absolute favorite. The Sorcerer palette. This one is extremely bright and fun. This one actually pairs really nicely with the Warlock palette because it brings in a little bit more depth and brightness, but this one is beautiful as well. The mattes in here perform really nicely. They're not the best, but the shimmers in here are beautiful. It's always the shimmers that get me with Fantasy Cosmetica, but I definitely thought with these smaller palettes there was room for improvement as far as their matte formula goes, but they've definitely done it. And then we have the Bard palette. This one I love. This is a beautiful fall color story. I love the sort of autumnal vibe that this one gives off with the yellow, the orange, the green, the sort of reddy brown shade. The shimmers in here are beautiful. I love that they gave us a pop of blue. Like, that's so unassuming, and I just think it really brings a lot of character to this palette. But let's get into these smaller ones over here. So this one is a highlighter palette. If you watched my declutter with bronzers and highlighters, you saw me talk about this, and I told y'all I was going to move it into my eyeshadow portion because these are way too dark for the cheek, but these are beautiful on the eye, and if they're in here with my palettes, I'll remember to reach for them. But whereas if it's a single highlighter that's too dark, I'm not going to reach for it if I put it in with my singles. I forget about my singles. I'm more likely to reach into a palette, but that's why this is in here. So this is highlighters, but it is now with my eyeshadows. The Enchanted Autumn palette. So this was the first ever collab for the brand, and they did it with makeup just for fun, and packaging is absolutely gorgeous. Like, look at how beautiful that is. The color story in here is really pretty, but this is not a palette that I love. Honestly, if I didn't have everything from the brand, I would declutter this, and maybe at some point I won't feel the need to have everything from the brand and I will declutter it. And the reason is this is a very deep leaning palette. I love the grunginess that it brings, but I need something lighter in this palette. I need more depth in this palette. I feel like this is very one-toned, and the shimmers in here are not the shimmers that I know and love from the brand. These are a little bit more on the metallic-y, the metallic-y flat side. They're not nearly as sparkly and flattering on the eye as what I prefer. Now, this all comes down to the creator and her personal preferences and what she looks for, and that's how a collab should be. It should be the perfect mashup of the brand and the creator, and I definitely see that with this palette. There's nothing wrong with it quality-wise. It's just not one that I was overly in love with after I used it as I was when I saw it like in the pictures and when I got it in person. So beautiful palette. It's just not my favorite from the brand. Cradled in Ice. Oh My gosh, this was the first time that we saw a bigger color story. This is a 12 pan palette and it is incredibly beautiful. This is another top favorite of mine for the year. I love the matte selection in here, these beautiful cool tones with this bubblegum pink up here. The shimmers in here are incredible, and the matte formula in this palette, impeccable. This is where they really started to improve their matte formula and they really started to do something, and I absolutely love this one. But Harvest of Souls, y'all, my #1 palette of 2024. My jaw dropped when I saw this color story. I actually gasped. I didn't know what to expect when they showed the cover art, but when I opened this, or when I saw them open this up, I just thought it was absolutely stunning. I love the shades in here. This right here, incredibly beautiful. It's a shade that I love. I've mentioned it several points, but I love the grunginess of this palette, but it's not so grungy like this one over here where I can't really do cohesive looks. It has just enough depth in it. It's such a stunning palette. The formula in here is the best formula they have done. They really did something with this palette, and it's going to be a really hard one for the brand to top, but I'm really excited to see what they're going to do in 2025. Alright, let's go through all of my Glamlite palettes because I do have quite a few. This is a large section and these take up so much room. Oh my gosh. But alright, let's go ahead and start up top with these two from the Coca-Cola collab that they did very recently. This was such a cute collection and I really enjoyed it. This is the original Taste palette. I'm going to take these out. I don't need those in here. They're just numbers. But this is such a pretty like neutral palette with a pop of red in it. The formula in here was okay. This isn't the best Glamlite formula, but it was really nice. I had fun with it. The shimmers in here were really pretty, and I'm going to keep that one. Then we have the Cherry palette, and this one, oh my gosh, it's purple. It's beautiful. I absolutely love this one. This was my favorite of the two. Again, the formula was okay. It wasn't anything to write home about. It wasn't their best formula, but it also wasn't their worst formula. The shimmers in here are really nice as well. We have the Chucky palette. So this is the Crazy in Love palette. It has that lenticular motion. This was like an anti-Valentine's Day palette last year. Color story in here is so incredibly beautiful. It is very cool tone, something that's not a favorite of mine, as I've mentioned at several points, but I do really like this one. I like the tones in here. I like how we have these more plummy shades. We do have like a couple of grays in here, but this is just a really good one if I want something kind of deep, dark, and smoky. I did get to play with this one during a Throwback Thursday, and I loved the look that I created with this one. The Garfield palette. I think this is probably my absolute favorite one from the brand. The formula in here is phenomenal. I don't understand why they can't bring us this formula every single time. The matte formula in here is incredibly smooth and buttery and just easy to work with, and the shimmers in here are wildly reflective. Such a good release from the brand, and it really flew under the radar. I was shocked by that one. Let's go over these two right here. So we have the original Ghostface Lives palette. This was the one that came out last year, and then they brought us another version this year, and I had intended on doing like a comparison video with these two, but with being in jury duty and everything, I never got around to it, and by the time I did, it was too late. Other things were coming out, so it never happened. But this is the original one over here. Not my favorite color story. I picked it up because it's Ghostface. It's Scream. I love Scream. I love a good slasher horror movie. They are my absolute favorites. I remember seeing the original one, and I've seen every single one since. But then this year, they brought us the new Ghostface Lives palette. This is Ghostface Returns, and I love the color story in this one so much better than the color story in this one. And looking at these, I think I might declutter this one. Like, do I need both of these? No, I truly don't. Like, I don't need to stick to the whole collector's mentality, but I'm looking at these side by side. I like the variation of this palette over here because we have the reds in here, which is what everybody wanted. I love the addition of the browns in here, and I'm looking at this one over here, and we've definitely got some color overlap, and this one's more gray leaning. The shimmers in here are beautiful, but I have a feeling the shimmers in here are going to be just as incredible. So I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. I honestly didn't see that coming. I thought, oh, I need to keep both of them, but I'm not going to reach for this one, especially if I have this one in my collection. So yeah, original Ghostface Lives palette is going to go, and this one is going to stay if I can get it back in the box. I have it in the box because I love it. It looks like a little TV. I just thought it was so cute. I don't always keep the outer packaging, but sometimes it's too cute to get rid of. So yeah, we've got a declutter. Okay. Friday the 13th. I picked this one up this year because everybody raved about this one. The quality, the color story. I am not a fan of Friday the 13th. I think the movies are lame. I think they're overrated. I mean, I can't with the ridiculousness of Friday the 13th, but the color story in here is beautiful. I think the formula in here was really nice. It wasn't the best formula, but again, it wasn't the worst formula. I definitely think that there's some palettes that are better than this one, but I also have some that are worse than this one, but absolutely beautiful. Love the color selection. This one is going to stay. My two from Nightmare on Elm Street, again, I picked these up. I'm a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan. We've got, what are you called? The Dream Master palette, and then we've got the Freddy Krueger palette, again, lenticular motion, and the Dream Master palette is red. Now, the formula in here is nice. This is not the best formula. Again, I'm telling you, Glamlite is very hit or miss as far as their formula goes, but this one was nice. I like the reds in here. I like the tones in here. It's the shimmers that are a little bit lackluster in this palette. They're not as sparkly as some of the other ones. Like you can see just comparing like these two right here, just in the pan, you can see how much more sparkly these are than these over here. So it is what it is. I'm going to hang on to this because I do like A Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's the same thing with this one. The shimmers are just, they're just so lackluster. They're not what I know Glamlite is capable of, but the mattes in here are really nice, so that one's going to stay as well. The Glamlite Betty Boop palette. This one, again, is one of the best formulas they have ever done. I love this palette. It ranked really high in my top 24, and look at this color story. Like, this is not a monochromatic red color story. I know the background kind of throws it off, but you have these sort of more plummy purple shades. You do have a red. You've got some more neutral leading shades in here. The shimmers are absolutely beautiful. They nailed it with this palette. Again, why can't we get this formula in every single palette? I will never understand it, but that one is beautiful. It's the same with the Scooby-Doo palettes. These two were so incredibly good. These were actually my first purchase from the brand, and this was a good first purchase from the brand. Like, honestly, if there was maybe this palette was the first one I purchased from the brand, I probably never would have purchased from them again, but I love these. So we have the Creeps and Crawls palette, and look at those shimmers. Look at how beautiful and sparkly they are. I'll never understand the inconsistencies, but I love this one. It is so beautiful. Yes, it's very dark. I need to bring in something else, but if I go in really light-handed with this shade, I can do a very cohesive look that works for my skin. And then we have the Retro Raggy palette. I love the name of this one, Retro Raggy. I just think it's so cute. And I love this color story. I think this is actually my favorite out of the two. I know that's really strange to say because I am a purple lover, but there's just something about the grunginess of this palette that I love, especially like these shades over here are gorgeous together. The shimmers, again, are so beautiful. Those are staying. The Halloween 2 Welcome to Haddonfield palette. Love it. Oh my god. Halloween is my franchise. I love it. Yes, it gets ridiculous. He should have died a long time ago, but I just love it. I love the whole series, and this palette is so gorgeous. I love the color story in here. I was so excited about it. Not all the references in here are from Halloween 2. They could have kind of just done a strictly Halloween palette, or they really could have stuck to Halloween 2 references, but I like the combinations of the blues and the oranges with the more neutral leaning tones in here. I think this one is absolutely beautiful, and again, this is the good formula from Glamlite. The Rick and Morty palette. This is one that I picked up earlier this year, and I have played with this one time, and it is gorgeous. It's incredible. People rant and rave about the quality in this palette, which is why I picked it up. I've never seen Rick and Morty before. My boys watch it and they love it, and they thought it was kind of cool that there was a palette with Rick and Morty on it, but I just love the vibrancy of this palette. I love how colorful it is, and these two shades right here really kind of stick out to me because I feel like you've got a gradient with all these other shades, and it's like, ooh, we're gonna throw in like a peach and an orange, but beautiful, beautiful palette. I definitely need to do something fun with this one next year. The Glamlite Kiss palette, the Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day palette. I was excited about this. I am not a huge Kiss fan, but I do love like 70s, 80s, 90s music. I listen to it on the regular, and I do really enjoy Kiss. There's a lot of songs that they have that just kind of bring back memories. So I was excited about this, and they did not do this collab justice. This is super cute. I love that. The color story, beautiful. I love that everybody got their own row, but let me tell you what, the formula in here, Glamlite should be ashamed of themselves. The fact that they made this palette and put Kiss on it, somebody should have been outraged, because I know I am. The greens in here, so patchy, so hard to work with. The rest of the mattes in here were okay, but these shimmers were so lackluster and just flat on the lid. And this palette really irritates me, because I feel like this one, they teased this collab for such a long time, and they had like this built up drama with, not drama, but like this built up excitement with this palette to be let down. It was so incredibly disappointing. This red right here, it's not even that great. It is not a true red on the lid. It comes off almost very pinky, and this one irritates me. It makes me mad every time I see it. So I am going to declutter it. I want this out of my collection because it makes me sad. They could have done such a better job with Kiss. I mean, come on now. They're known for their makeup, and there wasn't anything in this collection that I enjoyed. Okay, next we have my little Lethal Cosmetics collection. There's not a whole lot in here. I don't have a whole lot from the brand, but let's run through these. So the first one that I ever got was this one right here, and I think this is called the Wildflower palette. They don't put names on their palettes, and that drives me nuts, but this is so beautiful. This color story was the one that just really drew me into the brand. It always takes one color story to get me to purchase from a brand for the first time, and this is the one that did it. I love the mattes in here. The shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful, and they just did a really good job with that one. And then we have this one right here, and what was this one called? I think this was like Mellow Grove or something like that. I could be wrong. I don't know. Beautiful color story, but honestly, it's a little kind of repetitive once you get into it. I definitely think the packaging makes it look a little bit more colorful than it actually is, but these two shades are very similar on the lid. These two shades are very similar. You do have some pretty greens in here. You've got another deeper neutral in here. So while it's a beautiful palette, the shimmers are beautiful, the matte formula is incredible, there's just not as much variety in this one that I want. I am going to keep it because I do really enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with it. I just wish it had been curated a little bit better. But these four right here, these are from the Avatar: The Last Airbender collab that they did this year, and they nailed it with these. These are incredible. The formulas are incredible. The shimmers are beautiful. The mattes are just buttery, and they did such a good job with the color story. When I first reviewed this, I had not watched the show yet. Me and my boys have since watched it all the way through. They had already seen it, and I really do love this series. I think it's so fun, and it was a really good one. But first we have the Earth palette. Yes, this is the Earth palette, and this is a almost green monochromatic palette. You've got this really pretty pop of neutral in here. The shimmers are so beautiful in this palette. This one is a little bit more on that chunkier side, but it's absolutely stunning. Then we have the Air palette. Yep. This one was my favorite color story. It's chaotic, it's colorful, it's fun, it's neutral. You've got this pop of like reddy orange over here, this really pretty mustardy yellow. I really enjoyed this one. Then we have the Fire palette, which is a almost red monochromatic palette. You've definitely got some more neutral leaning tones in here. This gold is absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, these were such a good release from the brand. And then lastly, we have the Water palette, and this one, this shade right here, incredibly beautiful. It is so shifty and smooth and reflective, and it just looks like rippling water on the eye. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it, but I love blue and brown together. I think it's such a fun color combination. It's definitely, it can lean a little bit more on the neutral side depending on how you throw your blue in there, but I really did enjoy that one. Those are all going to stay. Next we have my ones from Glamlite, and I only have 4 palettes from the brand. I do have their new mini 6 pans that they released on the way to me. I don't know when those will get to me at some point. Hopefully they're, I think, going through customs right now. But let's go into the first one that I got from the palette. So this is the Sugar and Spice palette. This is like vegan leather packaging, and I thought this was a really pretty color story, and I do really enjoy it. I have to say I was really shocked with how small the pan size is. That's okay with me. I have a large collection, but this is a really pretty neutral palette with pops of pastels in it, and the shimmers in here are incredible. The brand has since improved their matte formula, I think twice at this point, and it just keeps getting better and better. I don't know how they keep coming up with a beautiful formula, but this is a brand that I have absolutely fallen head over heels in love with this year. I love the quads that they came out with. I do wish that they had done like quads in palette form instead of singles, but the formulas are incredible. This one is beautiful. I do really enjoy this one. And then they came out with the Pretty in Pastels palette, and this is really pretty. It's not an absolute favorite of mine. These two shades look very similar on the lid, but I like that we have depth in here. I like that we have some more mid-tones. This one could have gone a lot lighter than it is, but these shimmers in here are so insanely beautiful on the lid. They are smooth. They're like super shiny and sparkly. They're not pressed glitters or anything like that, but they are so beautiful. Barely Basic, my favorite from the brand so far, and a top palette of the year. Like, look at that. Oh my gosh. It is every colorful lover's dream neutral palette. I can't even think of the words right now, but this one is so beautiful. You have this really pretty sort of dusty kind of purple row right here. You've got your oranges, your greens, and then your true neutrals over here. You do have some more flaky kind of shimmer shades, and then these really pretty iridescent shifty shades up here. Like, you can't see all the shifts in them, maybe a little bit whenever I tilt it, but they all look white, but they have like the same undertone as the column that they're in. Gorgeous, gorgeous palette. And then I have the Mini Nocturnal palette. So this is one that I never picked up originally. I had always wanted it, and then it was gone. But then they brought it back in a mini formula with their updated, a mini form matte. Oh, wow. I've been sitting here for a really long time, y'all. But they brought it back with a mini format with their updated formula. That's what I meant to say. This is so beautiful. I love the tones in here. I love the variation in here. It could go a little bit lighter for my taste. I definitely feel the need to bring in something else to kind of lighten things up and blend them out just a little bit, but the shimmers are beautiful. The matte formula is beautiful, and I love this sort of vegan leather kind of suede packaging that they have going on. Stunning. These are all staying. And then last in this little section, I'm going drawer by drawer. If you've watched my Sunday bonus videos, then you can see kind of the setup of everything. It's changed a little bit because I had to rearrange, but these were all in the same drawer together. So we have my Wicked Widow palettes, and I really enjoy Wicked Widow. They haven't done a whole lot this year. It's been kind of weird, but the first one I ever got from the brand was the Graveyard Smash palette. I could not resist this color story. It is so different. It's very like classic Halloween movie. Like this, it looks like the Bride of Frankenstein's skin. I absolutely love it. And you've got like this really cool kind of like mustardy yellow shade, this pop of orange. Love it. Absolutely. I think this is still my favorite palette from the brand, and it's so small and cute, but I love it. And then for Valentine's Day this year, they came out with the Lovesick palette, and this one's cute. It looks like a little Valentine's card that you would have handed out in elementary school. At least I would have when they still did Valentine's Day parties. This is such a cute color story. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to it. You're definitely going to get something very kind of purple leaning with maybe a pop of blue in there, but I think it's a really good one. I really enjoy the formula. I like the shimmers in here, and I had a lot of fun with this one. Wicked Widow the Crow. Oh my gosh, I love The Crow. It's one of my favorite movies. I was obsessed with Brandon Lee when I was a kid, and I was devastated when I found out when I was a little bit older that he unfortunately passed during the filming of this movie. Freak accident on set. But look at that color story. Tell me that is not a The Crow color story. It is perfectly curated to go with the movie. Not my favorite color story though. I don't reach for this very often because these aren't the tones that I go for, but I just love it so much. And it's one that I can't get rid of because it's the Crow. If it had been just a regular color story, I probably would declutter if I'm being completely honest, but I think it's beautiful. The shimmers in here are definitely a little bit more on like that putty side, so I can get some creasing depending on, again, what primers I pair with it. I find it to be very similar to the one from Adept as far as like the texture and the wearability goes with the formula in here of the shimmers, but the mattes are incredibly beautiful. And then last we have the Resurrection palette, and this is another favorite of mine from the brand. I said this was my absolute favorite. It might be this one, but this is definitely my favorite rainbow palette in my collection because it's a rainbow with a twist. You definitely have like your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, but then you have like this really pretty sort of pukey green shade right here, this sort of denim blue. You've got your neutrals over here, this lilac-y shade. The shimmers in here are incredibly stunning, and I just love this one. When they revealed this one a year ago, I think this was like, I think this came out the end of 2023, maybe like holiday, spooky season. I can't remember exactly, but I knew I had to have this palette, and I love it. This one down here is so shifty, and I don't think you can see that shift, but it's like this red to a green. It's absolutely stunning. These are going nowhere. Alright, up next we have my Gourmande Girls palettes, and in all transparency, I am on the PR list now. I do have a code with the brand. It's Sarah that will save you 10% off, but a good chunk of these, actually a majority of these, were purchased by me, but I do have a couple of them that were sent to me. I will let you know when we get there, but let's go ahead and run through these. So the first one that we have is the Spooked palette. This is extremely new in my collection. It came out, was it last year or the year before? And I had always intended on picking it up, but it kept getting put on the back burner, and I kept thinking one day I'll pick it up. And when she said this was the final restock, FOMO kicked in, so I went ahead and picked it up, and I have zero regrets. It's absolutely stunning. I love the sort of chaotic yet cohesive color story in here. I can't speak to the formula because I haven't played with it, but I'm excited about this one. So I have that one. This one is also in collaboration with Doodles by the Bunny. They were like really on point with their collaborations last year, and I love her artwork that she does. She does such a good job. But when I picked that one up, I went ahead and picked up the Nightshade palette as well because, again, it was one that I always intended on picking up, and there was no threat to this one going out of stock and not coming back, but I figured since I was ordering, I might as well go ahead and snag this one. And look at that beautiful color stories with the purples, the greens, this beautiful like neon yellow shimmer shade right here. This one is beautiful as well. Like, I cannot wait to play with this palette. I think it is insanely gorgeous. And did I say that this was another collaboration with Doodles by the Bunny? If not, it is. It's another collaboration, but that one is beautiful. And then also from Doodles by the Bunny, we have the Haunted palette. And this one I did pick up earlier this year. It was deeply discounted, and I felt like it was one that was going to go out of stock, and I love the color story. This shade right here is the most beautiful chartreuse shimmer shade. This one is the reason I feel okay getting rid of the original Not Normal palette from Unearthly, because I have one in my collection that is so much better than that one, but this is gorgeous. I love the formula in here. It is so just creamy and pigmented, easy to work with. They blend out like a dream, and there's something about the formula in these slim palettes that is just, it's incredible. It's like the best formula ever that Gourmande Girls has done, but I love that one. And then we have the Silent Night palette. This is my first ever purchase from the brand. Again, Doodles by the Bunny, ex Gourmande Girls. I just played with this one in a Throwback Thursday video. Stunning palette. Absolutely love it. It is very neutral with pops of blues and golds in here. Like, there's not as many blues in here as you think. There's only 4 blue shades and then 2 yellows, and the rest of it is very neutral leaning, but such a stunning color story and beautiful formula. And then we have the Gourmande Girls Steph's Beauty Stash Nueva Vida palette that came out earlier this year, and again, ranked very high in my ranking this year, but this one is so beautiful. I love the chaoticness that this palette brings with the beautiful neons in here. I really, really enjoyed it. It's a matte heavy palette. We've got some beautiful shimmers. You've got a lot of depth in this palette. You can do something a little bit kind of, I don't want to say neutral leaning, but you could definitely kind of tone it down a little bit if you wanted to, but you're pretty much going to get bright, fun, colorful looks with this one, and they did such a good job. This is such a Steph's Beauty Stash color story. Then we have the Gourmande, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I think I've nailed it one time and I've butchered it every time since. But this one came out earlier this year, and this is a beautiful color story. It's sort of a pastel with a twist. It's a little bit on the chaotic side. I don't think the formula in this palette is as good as the ones that I've seen in these slimmer palettes over here and a couple others that we'll talk about in just a minute. It's not a bad formula. I just don't find it to be quite as easy to work with as these over here, but I did really enjoy it. The shimmers in here are beautiful, and I love the packaging. It's so cute. Oh, maybe this was my first purchase from the brand. Which one came out first? Was it this one or Silent Night? I can't remember, but this is the Warriors Wear Pink palette, and I have a feeling this was my first purchase from the brand. But this one, okay, let's talk about this one. So this one was in collaboration with Sirius Soto, which is a friend of Christina's, and Christina's the owner of Gourmande Girls, and she was battling breast cancer, and so this was sort of a fundraiser for her. They did it in collaboration together, and this color story is so beautiful. The formula in here is incredible. This is a very underrated palette, and I absolutely love it. It is so stunning. I love the tones in here. I love the meaning behind here. Like, we've definitely had our fair share of cancer in this family, and we've lost people, and you know, it's a very, you know, sensitive thing for a lot of people, and I love that Christina did this with a dear friend of hers, and it's just such a gorgeous palette. I still love it. I did play with this one in October. I created a look with it, and the look that I created was just so incredibly stunning. I love that it has this pop of teal up here, and I just love this palette. Alright, so we have the Peach Perfect palette. This one I actually won in a giveaway on Instagram. So she was revealing this palette, and she said that the name of the new palette was, I think, one of the lip oils on her website, and I put two of them in, and I can't remember what the other one is. I was like, it's either Peach Perfect or something else, and it was Peach Perfect. So me and one other person won this palette, and so technically this was sent to me for free, but it was not sent to me in PR. But this palette, first of all, formula in here, incredible. This formula is a lot like the ones in the slimmer palettes over here, but this color story is the one that really shocked me because it's peaches, and these tones don't really look good on me. They truly don't. They kind of clash with my very cool undertones in my skin, but I really, really have enjoyed playing with this palette. It's one that I didn't think I was going to love as much as I do. Not because it's not beautiful, not because it's not good, not because the shimmers aren't beautiful, shifty, and reflective, but because of my skin tone. But I have really loved playing with this palette. The greens in here are beautiful. The neutrals in here are beautiful. And if I just do like a pop of this peach on like the lower lash line, inner corner, things like that, it's absolutely stunning. Love this one. The Calavera palette, this was the first one that I did receive from the brand in PR, and this was their spooky season release, and this one is for Dia de los Muertos, and Christina, the brand owner, is, I believe, half Hispanic. I'm not exactly sure. I apologize if I'm wrong, but this is such a beautiful rainbow palette with some beautiful shimmers in here. I do wish we had a little bit more variety as far as the shimmers go, but this one down here is just so transformative. It looks beautiful with anything that you do in here. Quality in here is fantastic. I didn't experience any issues. I know some people said that they did, but I mean, if you work from dark to light, it works beautifully. Not every formula is going to go from light to dark, and not every formula is going to go from dark to light. But yeah, I really love this palette. I think it's beautiful. She did such a good job, and it's a big one from the brand. And last from Gourmande Girls, we have these two right here. These are in collaboration with Ladybug Glow, and these were featured in an ice cream beauty box earlier this year. I can't remember which month exactly, but I love these palettes. I would have picked them up regardless. I did end up paying the extra $10 and getting both of them in my box, but Christina and Amanda from Ladybug Glow are best friends. They came together, curated these palettes, and these are so good. I love Ladybug Glow. It's a favorite brand of mine. I love them for a very long time. I am now fortunate enough to know Amanda, but I love the brand far before I did. But they came out with the El Camino palette and the Paradise Cove palette. So first we have the El Camino palette. I do believe both of these are still available. These are so good. I love this color story in here. Personally, I like this one more, but these are beautiful paired together as well. This one is just a little too cool tone leaning for my personal taste. It's got a lot of those grays and like that black in there. I love a black, but not like black and gray, if you catch my drift. The shimmers in here are so beautiful. I love this one right here. And this is just a really pretty color story, but like I said, this one is my favorite of the two. And there's something about the greens and the teals in here with like the neutral pops. The shimmers in here are absolutely beautiful. You wouldn't think that I would love this color story, but I've definitely come around to greens this year, and it's this shade right here. I'm telling you right here, this shade El Sol. Put that in a palette and it's sold immediately. I'm a sucker for that. For that shade and for purples, I am a total sucker. But absolutely gorgeous palettes. I love both of these, and it was so exciting to see Ladybug Glow kind of sneak back into the scene. She went on a break earlier this year and she's now coming back, so that's exciting. But that is a perfect segue into the rest of my Ladybug Glow palettes, which are right here. So first we have this little quad, and this is one that she did for like her birthday. It was just a fun little limited edition thing. She created it, brought us some beautiful shades. Oh my gosh. And of course I picked it up. These are so beautiful. They are shifty, they are reflective, they are so smooth on the eye and just super fun. I do really enjoy that. This one right here is the most recent release from the brand. Well, no, I take that back. She just came out with 2 others, and I was going to pick those up, but they are featured in the Ice Cream Beauty box. I'm subscribed to it, so I will get those in January, and I will have a video with them. But this is the most recent palette up to that date, and I did receive this one in PR. This is the Magical Creation palette. I also have a code with Ladybug Glow. It is SARAH10, and this is so cute. It's a little 5-pan palette. You've got 2 mattes, 3 shimmers in here, and I just love the ease of this palette. I know it's like very kind of boring to a lot of people. You know, you're not going to get a whole lot of variety as far as the looks go, but I love a smaller, well-curated palette. I love one that I don't really have to put a whole lot of thought into it when it comes to creating a look, and the quality in here is fantastic. I love the formula. The shimmers are beautiful, and I really enjoy this one. We have her 2 Christmas palettes from last year. We have Krampus Eve and Krampus Continued, and these are so fun and so cute. Krampus Eve is pretty much an all matte palette. You have one beautiful sort of rainbow iridescent multi-chrome shade in the middle, and then the rest of them are mattes, and these mattes are incredibly beautiful. They perform beautifully on the lid, and I love the color selection. But this one pairs beautifully with Krampus Continued, which is more of a shimmer heavy palette. You're going to get 5 shimmers and 4 mattes in this one, and this shade right here in the middle is so incredibly beautiful. If this one looks a little bit funky, it's because she sent this one separately. The shade that was in here was not up to her standard, so she sent a separate one like as a little single, and I managed to kind of jimmy it out of there and pop the new one in there just so I could have it all in one palette, because honestly, if it wasn't in here, I wouldn't think about it and I wouldn't reach for it, and I would probably be really disappointed. But beautiful, beautiful color story. Very neutral leaning with just sort of some pops of shimmers, but you put these 2 together and it's a beautiful like 18-pan color story. Absolutely love those. Earlier this year, she came out with the End of the Rainbow palette in collaboration with Ice Cream Beauty. This is the first Ice Cream Beauty box I ever got, and look at that. Oh my gosh, it is so cute, so fun. It is very St. Patrick's Day. I love the shimmers in here. Again, the mattes are absolutely beautiful. This shade, this pot of gold shade, is so intense and beautiful. The Castle of Horror palette. This one is in collaboration with Blairdale MUA, who now has their own brand, and I'm so proud of him. He's got a fantastic formula. He's got beautiful palettes. I do have his first palette, and his newest one is on the way. It's not here yet. It might be here before I finish all of this though, but this is the Castle of Horror palette, and look at that yummy, yummy color story. This is one of my absolute favorites from the brand. It's a favorite purple color story of mine. I just love it so much. This shade right here, Castle of Horror, is like the most beautiful like blue to red duochrome. Like look at that shift. You can see that shift in that mirror. Oh, so incredibly beautiful. Then we have the Floresta palette. This was the first palette I ever got from the brand and the one that made me fall in love with it. And first of all, the little koala on the front is so cute, but look at this color story. How beautiful is that? Again, these two shades right here, sold. We know why I got it. But I love the tones in here. I love the variation in here. I love how it's got these beautiful pops of color in it. And I just think it's absolutely beautiful. Beautiful formula, beautiful shimmers. Really love this one. And then we have the Creatura palette. I picked this one up, I think right after she announced that she was shutting down for a little bit and she wasn't going to restock any of these. And I really wanted this one. It is so fun. I love the artwork on the front. That's so cute. But look at this color story. Oh my gosh, if you take these out, it's a very kind of muted, grungy color story, which I absolutely love. But then you have this addition of these two neon pops in here, and it is just so fun, so beautiful. I really love playing with this one. I need to play with these more. I really need to kind of roll these into Throwback Thursdays a little bit more, but you know, it just kind of is what it is. But all of my Ladybug glow is staying, as well as all of my Gourmande girls. Alright, so I have two from Sigma Beauty, and I think I'm going to declutter both of these. I don't reach for these palettes. Sigma is not a favorite brand of mine. I'm not overly impressed with the formula. There's nothing wrong with the formula. I just don't think it's as great as other people say, and that's okay. We all have different preferences. I'm not knocking the brand saying that it's bad. If you love it, that's great. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with these. I just have better formulas in my collection that I'm reaching for, and I figure since I'm not reaching for these, and since I'm not really purchasing eyeshadow palettes from the brand, there's no point in hanging on to these for reference or anything like that. Sigma has lots of products that I do really enjoy, but I don't enjoy everything. But the first one that I have is the Nomad palette, and this is beautiful. First of all, the packaging is like this velvet packaging. It is so beautiful. The color story in here is beautiful. This is a very me color story with these sort of mauvey rosy tones in here, but I don't ever think of this palette. Whenever I want these shades, I think of other ones in my collection, and it's just sitting here taking up space, collecting dust, and it needs to be loved by somebody else. So I'm going to pass that one on, as well as this one. I know I already said that, but this is the Beauty and the Beast palette, and I've been holding on to this one because it is Beauty and the Beast. The packaging is beautiful. It has this really pretty overlay. Both of them still have the brush in them. The color story is beautiful. It captures the movie perfectly with the blues and the golds and the purples in here. I do wish that we had like a true gold for Belle's dress, or like a true yellow gold, but we don't. It is what it is. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and pass this one on too. I have so many palettes in my collection, and these are very thick. They take up a lot of room, and we're going into a new year. There's going to be a lot of new things coming out, so I need to free up space and just pass these on. Alright, moving on to Sugar Drizzle. So I really enjoy Sugar Drizzle. I think they have such a good matte formula. They have incredible shimmers, and they're still fairly affordable for what they're offering. They've got beautiful, shifty kind of special shades, and those can get really expensive, but I love Sugar Drizzle. I think they're so cute. They're such a fun brand, and I really enjoy them, so I don't see myself decluttering any of these. Up first, we have the Monster Party palette. This was a spooky release this year, and look at how fun this is. I do wish there was a little bit more depth in here. I can create cohesive looks, but personally, I like more depth in a palette. But the shimmers are beautiful, the matte formula is beautiful, and I really enjoy this color story. We have the Trash palette. Look at how cute this is with the little trash panda on the front. Oh my gosh, and this color story is so beautiful. It's an all shimmer palette. I think these two were my first purchases from the brand. I bought them at the same time to kind of go together, but these are beautiful. They're reflective, they're shifty, they're smooth, they're just so easy to pick up and user friendly. They never crease on my lid, they don't wear off, I don't get fallout, and I just love this one. The Matte Pressed Pigment palette, this one, y'all. Every purple shade you could possibly want with some pops of teals in here. Is this a little repetitive? Absolutely, but it's also beautiful, and if you need a purple shade, this palette has everything you need. I think it's still available on the website. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but the formula in here is incredible. This is a favorite matte purple palette in my collection. Like, if I want to do a purple look and pair it with some singles, this is the palette that I'm going to go for. I absolutely love it. the Plumeria Dragon palette. This one came out last year, but I got this one in an Ice Cream Beauty box this year. Look at that adorable packaging. I don't know why I didn't pick it up sooner, but beautiful color story. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I love it more than I thought I was going to, and I think that's what was stopping me from purchasing it the first time, because I felt like it was very one note, but there's definitely some depth in here, and it could have had a little bit more variety, but I appreciate it for what it is. I enjoy it. I love the little pop of green for the dragon, and it's just a really good one. And then we have the Happy Halloween palette. This was a limited edition one that she came out this year for spooky season, and look at how fun this is. It is an all shimmer palette with one matte down here, and these are very Halloween colors. They are very purple heavy, which I love purples. I love the pumpkin shade in the middle, and I've really enjoyed this one as well. And last in this little section, we have my Simply Posh palettes. I only have 3 from the brand, but you know, there's other ones that I would love to purchase. I think the Cozy Cabin one is coming back in stock, and I might pick that one up when it does. But first up, we have the Berry Icy palette. This is the first one I ever purchased from the brand, and look at that. It has blueberry tones. It has like raspberry tones. It is so beautiful. I love this one. It's like 2 9-pan palettes coming together to form one great big huge 18-pan palette. And I thought the formula in here was really nice. I know they have since improved their formula, but I don't have any issues as far as the quality in this one. The shimmers perform beautifully. They're not quite as reflective and sparkly as what they have now, but the matte formula is really good as well. I do really enjoy that one. I don't know why they didn't reformulate this one. Maybe it didn't do as well as I thought it would. I don't know. The Citrus Punch palette. This is the reformulated version of this one. I wanted this palette so bad when it first came out, but so many people were talking about how hard pan the shimmers were, so I skipped out on it, and it was one of those that was in the back of my mind every single day since it came out. And when they announced that they were reformulating and restocking this palette, I pre-ordered it. I jumped all over it. I have never moved so fast to go to a website, and this is stunning. I love, love, love this color story. It is just so bright and fun and colorful. It is very summery, and it makes me think of a hot summer day with like lemonade or limeade, like going through Sonic and getting a really big Route 44 drink, and I just love it. The shimmers in here are incredible. The matte formulas in here are incredible, and this is my favorite color story from the brand, and one of my favorite palettes in my collection, if I'm being completely honest. I can get rid of that. I don't even know why I have it. Then we have the Coastal palette. This one was a new release from the brand this year, and I ordered it at the same time as the Citrus Punch palette. That's when they restocked them. They also restocked the Aurora Lights palette. I wish I had picked that one up, but I gotta show restraint somewhere. But this one is so beautiful. Like, this is a very beachy palette. I think it's very well curated. I really like the color story in here, and honestly, I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, not because of the formula or the quality, but just the color story. It just didn't give me that full-on punch that I wanted. It does have some grays in here, which I'm not a big fan of, but I do think that this one would pair really nicely with the Berry Icy palette, like just bringing in some other mattes. And if I was the type of person to rearrange their palettes, I could really get some cool color stories out of rearranging both of these, but I like to keep my palettes the way that they are, the way that they were intended and curated. But let's go ahead and put these away and move on to my next drawer. Alright, so next drawer, let's go ahead and dive into my ColourPop collection. So this is everything I have. It's not a huge collection, but it's definitely grown this year. I try not to give in too much to the ColourPop craze. They didn't come out with nearly as much this year as they normally do, but they definitely came out with a bunch of palettes that I didn't pick up, and I was very tempted to, but I held restraint. But let's go ahead and dive into this. So the first one that we have sitting right here on top is the Cloud 9 palette. This is a really pretty cool tone color story. The matte formula in here is not the best. It's a little bit dusty, a little bit drier, not impossible to work with, but compared to some other formulas, it's not the best one. ColourPop is another brand that they have several different formulas in their back pocket, and they're not all created equal, but the shimmers in here were just a little lackluster. They could have been a little bit more reflective and a little bit more smooth. This one right here is a pressed glitter, which isn't my favorite. Normally I would declutter this palette, but this was the first ever palette that I played with on my channel, so I'm going to hang on to it for sentimental reasons. It's just, you know, it's very special to me. This is what I started my channel with, and yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and hang on to that one. The Beauty and the Beast palette, I was so excited about this one, and first of all, I love the cover art. I love that they chose the ballroom dancing scene for their picture on the front. Color story in here is beautiful. I have a really hard time with this blue shade right here, and I'm the only one that has it. Nobody ever talks about having a hard time with it, but I also haven't seen anybody use that blue shade on camera. Not that I'm aware of, but if you watched my video reviewing this, I had to take that look off and start over because it was just making a huge mess. I got a ton of fallout, I got patching, and it just wasn't great, but I can use it. I just have to be very careful how I use it. It works really good if I go in like on my lower waterline with a very dense brush and have it kind of sprayed down a little bit. Not the best, but I can make it work. But other than that, I didn't have any issues with this color story. It's very neutral if you take out the one blue, but it's still very pretty and I do enjoy it, and I'm going to hang on to it because I got rid of my other Beauty and the Beast palette, and Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite Disney movies. Next we have the ColourPop Frosty the Snowman palette. This one came out for holiday this year. It's, I think, the most recent palette they've come out with, and this is so cute. It's so fun. I wish we had a little bit more variety in here as far as the mattes go. It is very light leaning. We only have one mid-tone, and we didn't really need a black and a gray in here. I get it, but we didn't need it. Again, we've got some pressed glitters in here, but the pressed glitter formula from ColourPop is not super dry and super chunky. It's actually fairly nice for being a pressed glitter, but cute palette. We're gonna keep that. I don't think I'm gonna get rid of anything from ColourPop, honestly. We have the Foolish Mortals palette. I picked this one up this year when they restocked it. I missed out on it last year. It sold out so quick, and I kept thinking they were going to bring it back in stock, and they never did. So when they brought it back in stock this year, I picked it up, and I love this color story. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think it captures the ride at Disney World very well. It's been a really long time since I've been to Disney World. It has been 24 years. We are, well, when you're watching this, we're actually in Disney World, but I just think this is absolutely beautiful. I love the movie, I love the ride, and yeah, I really enjoyed this palette. So that one is going to stay. Let's do Star Wars really quick because I am a huge Star Wars fan. In my mind, there's only 3 movies, 4, 5, and 6. The rest of them could honestly care less about, although I do like the prequels more than I like the sequels. The sequels were awful. Disney needs to stop. They're just destroying the franchise. I do like The Mandalorian, and I did like Obi-Wan. The rest of them, I could care less. But let's go ahead and start with the Star Wars palette. I love and adore this one. I have dug my finger into these sort of tie-dye shades now. I was holding off and not doing it because I didn't want to ruin them, but such a beautiful color story. It really captures the essence of the movie. I love how you have the classic picture up here from the movie poster. I will die on the hill that Empire Strikes Back is the absolute best movie out of the entire franchise. I know this is not from The Empire Strikes Back, but it's still my absolute favorite. There were just so many moments in that movie that just absolutely incredible. I could go on and on about it all day, but love this palette, love the color story. It is staying. We have the Mandalorian palette. This is my least favorite out of all of them, but it's part of the Star Wars collection, and I'm going to hang on to it. It's cool tone. I do like this shade right here. I do like this sort of mustardy shade, and actually this kind of gives me Fantasy Cosmetica fighter vibes. Am I the only one that sees that? If it wasn't already put away and in a big pile of stuff, I would totally compare it, but it is what it is. But beautiful palette, not my favorite, but I am keeping it. The Child. This is a lot of people's favorite palette, and it's so cute. I love the color story in here. It is green. We've got pops of neutrals. I do really enjoy this one. We have a Super Shock shadow up here, and like I said, I really enjoy it, but it's not an absolute favorite. The formula in these is so good though. The Darth Vader palette. I thought they did a really good job with this one. I know a lot of people were kind of disappointed in the color story, but it's a Darth Vader palette. I mean, what else are you going to do other than like grays and reds? I do, however, wish they had swapped out one of these for like a true black. I think that would have been incredible, or even like a really pretty black shimmer. But otherwise, I think they did a really good job with it, and I enjoy it. But my favorite one out of the Star Wars is the C-3PO palette. Like, look at that. It is gold. It is brown. It is absolutely incredibly stunning. I love the formula in here. I love the shades in here. It is very shimmer heavy, pretty, but I mean, you've got the 3 matte shades that you need to create a look, and then you just switch it up with the shimmer in here. If you have been kind of eyeballing the Natasha Denona Golden palette, I think this one would be a really good affordable alternative to that one. The quality is not going to be as great. You're not going to get as much variety, but I mean, it's brown and gold. There's only so much variety you can get, and this one is incredible. I do really enjoy that one. All right, let's go into these. So the Dream Street palette in collaboration with Kathleen Lights. This was my first ever ColourPop purchase, and Kathleen Lights was like, she was influencing me to buy all kinds of stuff back in the day, and I thought this was like the most bright, vibrant color story ever. I don't play with this one anymore. It is very old at this point. I'm sure it has to be getting close to 10 years old, but I can't bring myself to get rid of it because it's a piece of makeup history, and I loved it for so long, and I just thought ColourPop was doing something really fun with this one. And it is beautiful, but it's neutral with like 2 pops of color in here, but that one's gonna stay. Going Coconuts. This is my favorite neutral palette from ColourPop. It's actually a favorite from ColourPop. I just love this one. This is the second one I've ever had. I don't reach into it as much anymore because I do have such a large collection, but if you want just a very good neutral everyday wearable color story that you can just do some no-brainer looks with, this one is a really good one. I highly recommend it. It's got a little bit more of like that pinky undertone to it, so it's not a cool tone, but it's not a straight neutral tone either. And actually, if you've been eyeballing the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude and you just can't bring yourself to spend that money, this is a really good alternative for that one as well. Obviously, the formula is not nearly as good as the one in Natasha Denona. You're not going to get the same variety, same as I just said with the C3PO palette, but still a really good affordable alternative, and I do love it. I hate this plastic packaging though. I wish it was just in the cardboard because it breaks, it warps, it doesn't close as well as it should, and it kind of rubs off, but it is what it is. The Twilight palette. This was the palette that I feel like broke the internet at the beginning of this year. They have restocked this one 3 times now, or no, they've restocked it twice, and it has sold out 2 of the 3 times that it has been released. It's sold out at launch, it's sold out on restock, and I think it's still in stock now, probably because everybody has it, but this is a really pretty color story. I hate this up here so much. I hate the Twilight movies. Let me just say that. I love the books. I hate the movies. It's the acting. It's everything about it. It's the weird blue cast that it has. But with that being said, this captures the movie beautifully. It doesn't capture what I envision when I read the book, but yeah, they did a really good job. It's a cool tone color story, and it's a cool tone color story that I can get on board with. The Stranger Things palette. I love Stranger Things. It's a favorite show of mine. Not an all-time favorite, but one I am eagerly waiting for season 5 to come out. I cannot wait to see where the story goes. I think that's supposed to end it, I'm pretty sure, but who knows at this point. But they did such a good job with this one. You've definitely got more Hawkins up here and more upside down here with like just the way that the tones go from like bright and they just kind of die off into like this dead zone. I think they did a really good job with the curation of the color story. I love the shades that they chose. The shimmers are beautiful. Again, we've got some pressed glitters in here like this one up here, but it's not a horrible formula, and I've really enjoyed playing with this one. Precious Metals. I think this is probably one of the absolute best palettes ColourPop has ever done. I don't have a lot of their mega palettes, but this one is just, it's every neutral shade you could possibly need. You've got warm tones, you've got cool tones, you've got grays, you've got golds, bronze, taupey shades, all of it. The formula in here is incredibly good. Like, this is so good. I would pay more for this palette. If you repackaged it and put like Natasha Denona on it, I would 100% pay the $69 price point for this palette. I think it is that good. The shimmers in here are absolutely beautiful. There's not any pressed glitters in this palette, I don't think. I don't remember there being a pressed glitter in this palette. I'm pretty sure there's not. I have used every single one, and I absolutely love this one. It's boring, it's neutral, but if these are the shades that excite you and this is what you're looking for, this is such a good one. It's very reflective and annoying, but I do kind of like the ombre effect on the front. I think it's really pretty. All right, the last 2 that I have from ColourPop, we have the Pokemon palette, and I love Pokemon. My boys love Pokemon. My youngest has a massive Pokemon card collection, and he's trying to get them like PSA graded so that he can find out the value of them. It's a whole thing. We played Pokemon Go. We've watched the show. Like, we've done the whole thing, and I think this is so cute. It's a rainbow palette, but they did a really good job with the curation of this one. I love how it's laid out by type, and you've got like your different gems and stuff like that. I like the names of the palettes. This one up here, Gem Leader, is absolutely beautiful. It's definitely a pressed glitter, but it is so beautiful on the lid, and I just really enjoyed this one. I definitely think we could have had a little bit more depth, because the deepest shade in here is going to be this matte green shade right here, and you can't pair that with everything, so I definitely need to bring in something else, but it is a really good one. I do really enjoy that one. And the last one I have is going to be the Harry Potter Return to Hogwarts palette, and I love this. This is such a beautiful fall color story. It is massively huge. Like, we did not need all these different brown shades or these different taupey shades, but it's still really, really pretty. Again, we've got some pressed glitters in here, but I like that we have all of the houses with their shades. We've got a really good variety in here, and this is a really good fall color story. I do think this one is still available on the ColourPop website, and if it is, it's a really good one, whether or not you like Harry Potter, but just for the color story itself, it's a really good one. Alright, so we've got a couple of one-offs in this palette, and the first one that we have is from the brand Get Stoned. They do rhinestones for like the face, and they came out with a 10-pan all shimmer palette this year, and this is so beautiful. I was really impressed with the formula in here. They're not the most shifty thing in the whole world, but they're sparkly, they're smooth, they're very reflective, they look beautiful on the eye. I don't get any creasing, fallout, or anything like that, and this is just a really good companion palette, and it's pretty affordable for what you get. I do think there's a couple of duochromes in here. They don't have a super strong shift to them, but that's okay. It's still a beautiful palette, and I'm going to hold on to that one. My Martine Cosmetics Mayday palette. How many of y'all are sick and tired of seeing this palette at this point? I feel like it's mentioned in everything I do lately, but this was a Halloween release last year, 2023, and first of all, that's like the side of a shark, so you've got his little gills right there, the slash on it to make the M. This feels like what you would imagine a shark feels like. It's really, really cool, and the color story in here is beautiful. It is very on point, very on theme. I love the names in here. I mean, you've got Ben, Alex, Mike, you've got Bruce right there. Hello, Bruce. We love Bruce. And I just think this is a really pretty color story. To me, this screams winter, and I've tried so hard to get this one to win a Throwback Thursday, and it never does, but the formula in here is incredible. It is almost monochromatic blue. You do have these more kind of taupey shades over here, which definitely give off like shark skin vibes. You've got the one red in here. I do wish that we had more red. Like, maybe we had like a really pretty blood red shimmer shade in here. I think that would have been like the cherry on the cake, but this is a really beautiful one. I do really enjoy the formula, and I would love to try more from the brand if she comes out with another story, another color story that really calls my name. She had a couple, but I think at this point they're sold out. There was the Diner palette, and then I think the Moolah palette, and I don't think they're available. Okay, let's move on to Lunar Beauty. So I have 3 palettes from Lunar Beauty, and the first one is the Moonshroom palette. This one came out earlier this year. This one ranked in my top 24 of 24, and this is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, look, Katie hair. It's in everything. I love the grungy color story in here, but this pop of yellow and this periwinkle purple, stunning. Gorgeous curation, beautiful formula. We do have a duochrome in here somewhere. Where is the duochrome? I can't remember where it is. I can't see it right now. I don't have my glasses on, so it's really hard to see a whole lot of anything, but beautiful, beautiful formula. I'm really impressed with the formula of Lunar Beauty. They're not an absolute favorite brand of mine, but if they come out with a color story that really resonates to me, I am going to pick it up, and this one is beautiful. It did not disappoint. This one came out last year. This one is in collaboration with Laura Lee. They brought us the full fantasy collection, and it's perfection. I mean, they're best friends. They both have their own beauty brand, although I'm not sure what Laura Lee is doing with her brand. I haven't seen her do anything in like forever, but this color story in here is so beautiful. It is very neutral with some pops of color in here, and when I say color, I mean purple and this really pretty like teal duochrome shade right there. This is a beautiful palette. We do have a lot of browns in here, but they are very neutral lovers as far as eyeshadows go. I do like these more kind of sagey green leaning shades down here. This is just a really pretty one, and I thought it was very unique as far as a neutral eyeshadow palette goes, and I do really enjoy that one. And then this one is very new. I actually got this one as a birthday present this year. It's the Nude Prism palette. A friend of mine heard me talking about it and how everybody goes on and on about it, so she picked it up for me, and it's beautiful. I do really love it. It is very neutral leaning, but if I had a really small collection, this would be a neutral palette I could see me getting a lot of use out of. It's one that I definitely want to get more use out of. Maybe I'll take this one on my trip. Who knows? Y'all will already know at this point, but while I'm filming this, I have no idea what I'm going to take with me, but this is really pretty. I like how we have these sort of blushy pink shades. We don't find those a whole lot in a neutral palette, but very pretty. I love the gradient. The shimmers in here are beautiful. All right, let's talk about Melt real quick. So I do not have a huge Melt collection. I only have, what, 6 palettes from the brand, and I'm okay with it. Melt was a brand that I lusted after for a very long time, and I do really enjoy them, but they haven't really come out with anything that's called my name since this one, and this one I got because it's in collaboration with Bailey Sarian. But let's start up here with the She's and Parties palette. This is my favorite one from the brand, I'm pretty sure. I love the color story in here. The shimmers are okay. They're not anything spectacular. They're not overly reflective. They're just like a really pretty sort of metallic-y shimmer on the lid. I think mine is fine. I know some people have been finding mold in their Melt palettes as well as their Patrick Ta palettes, but beautiful color story. I do really enjoy that one. We have the Muerte and the Vita palette. So these were, gosh, what year did these come out? I don't even know at this point what year these two palettes came out, but these got everybody all worked up because they were so different. They were bright, they were vibrant, they were fun, they were colorful. Melt was doing something different, and I still love these palettes, but Vita is my favorite of the two. Like, look at that. Oh my gosh, it is so bright and vibrant and fun. I recently did a palette bingo with these two palettes in October, and I had a blast doing it. It was really what made me fall in love with the palette bingo, but I love the shades in here with the reds, the orange. Again, my yellows and greens down here. We love it. And I love this is a matte heavy palette because Melt just does not have the best shimmer formula. But then there's the Muerte palette, and this is a lot of people's absolute favorite. This one is very dark for me. As somebody who has very fair skin, I have a hard time creating a cohesive look with this one on its own. I definitely need to bring in something else. These two palettes do pair together beautifully, but personally I like to bring in something a little bit different, something maybe more on the pastel-y side to kind of lighten this palette up. This one has 3 shimmers in it, and the shimmers in here again are nice. They're not the best, but I do think that these shimmers are better than other shimmers that they have in other palettes. But those are staying. We have the Gemini and the Gemini 2 palette. I was very late to the game on this one. I picked these up last Black Friday, not this most recent one, but 2023, because everybody loved them, and I do love these. I think these are absolutely beautiful. So the first Gemini, like, look at that. That is a beautiful grungy fall color story. I love the greens with these sort of neutral browns over here. You have a black in the middle. Again, 2 shimmers. Shimmers okay, could take them or leave them, but they are really pretty. And then we have the Gemini 2 palette, and this is one of the ones that comes to my mind whenever I want to reach for the tones that are in the new Mod palette from Sigma. I will go for this palette before I go for that one. Yes, the shimmers in that one are prettier, but I like the formula in this one better. I like the gradient in this one better. Okay, no, that's just pan showing. I was like, ooh, do not tell me that there is mold in this palette, but very pretty. I like the tones in here, and these two actually pair together beautifully. Like, I see why we have Gemini and Gemini 2. And the last one I have for Melt is the Bailey Sarian Fatally Yours palette. I love Bailey Sarian. I have been watching her for years and years and years. I just love her content. I love her Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Mondays. I love her Dark History series, and I think she's so beautiful and talented. And I still have the insert because I couldn't get rid of it with Bailey's eyes. She's always watching you. But this is the color story in here, and it's beautiful. It's an all matte palette, but I will say some of these shades do look very similar on the eye. There's not as much variety as I was hoping for, but I do really like it. I like the detailing in here, and I think it's really, really pretty. From CXC, I have 3 palettes from the brand. I discovered this brand earlier this year and they have an incredible formula. They do have very large palettes, but they also do a very well curated 9-pan color story if you don't want the big version of it, because some of them can be a little repetitive. But the first one that I have is going to be the Sweet Dream palette, and I bought this one before Simply Posh came back out with their Citrus Punch palette, thinking that this one would kind of scratch that itch that I have, and it is beautiful. This is like a strawberry lemonade palette. It doesn't have the greens and the oranges in it, and it is a little bit repetitive, but it's beautiful. The formula is incredible. The shimmers are so beautiful. These aren't the best shimmers that they have done. We'll get to those in just a minute, but I do really enjoy this palette, and the artwork is gorgeous. I do really enjoy these. This is not AI artwork either. This is all done by one of the owners of the brand. It's owned by 2 guys, and they do a beautiful job. This is the Beautiful Nightmare palette. This one, my clasp is broken, so it doesn't stay closed very well, but you can see why I picked this one up. Is it a little repetitive? Absolutely. But do I regret it? Also, no, I don't. I think it's beautiful. The matte formula is incredible. We've got blues, we've got purples, beautiful shimmers in here. I like the shimmers in this palette more than I do in the Sweet Dream palette. But my favorite one from CXC is Raven's Revenge. This was their spooky season release. Oh my gosh, it is so incredibly beautiful. Look at this color story. Now that is a well curated color story for such a big palette. I love the shimmers in here. Like, the shimmers in here have definitely been amped up and just, they're so reflective. They're so smooth and beautiful. And the matte formula in here, I feel like has improved even from these 2. And all 3 of these came out this year. They are like on top of it with their releases. They release a ton of color stories. If there's a color story you're looking for, I guarantee you CXC has it, either in one of their big palettes or one of their small ones. I think these are 20-pan palettes. I could be wrong. I'm not going to count it right now, but let's move on to our last brand in this drawer, and that is going to be Crype. This is a C Beauty indie brand that launched at the beginning of this year, and I absolutely love this brand. They had become an absolute favorite of mine. The formula is incredible, and this brand is what sort of got me on my C Beauty rabbit hole that I've been down this year. Sorry, there was a hair of mine stuck between these palettes because there it is. Anyways, the formula in here is incredible. I love this sort of shiny, like faux leather kind of pleather packaging they have going on, but let's run through these. So the first one that they came out with was Burnt Forest. I think this one's still out of stock at this point. Still my absolute favorite. It ranked in my top 24 of the year, and it's neutrals, but you've got pops of beautiful shimmers in here. The formula is incredible. You are going to get a lot of fallout with these. It just is what it is. It's pretty much a standard with C Beauty brands. Not all of them, but a good majority of them. But the formula in here is pigmented. It's very easy to work with, and the shimmers are incredibly reflective. And look at that shift. Oh my gosh, I love that one. And then they came out with these 2. They came out with them at the same time. That one is upside down. So the first one that we have is going to be the Atlantis palette. This one is like a neutral palette with pops of blues in them. All of their palettes have neutrals in it, and I really appreciate it. All of them except for this one. But this one is so incredibly beautiful. I love these 2 shimmer shades right here. Again, the formula is very easy to work with. It's nice and pigmented. You are going to get a lot of fallout. I'm not going to repeat myself with every one of these palettes. I'm not a big fan of this shade right here, but it definitely has a purpose in here. You've got a really pretty little pop of purple in here, and it's just a gorgeous color story. And then they also came out with the Violet Crazy one. Oh, I love this one. I'm surprised that this one didn't make my top palettes, but there was just so many of this color story that came out. This one definitely gives Unearthly Dreamer vibes, but I like this one a little bit better. The shimmers are just way more amped up and beautiful, but again, gorgeous color story. And then I have this little one that they came out with recently. This is the Tulip Dream palette. It's a little 5-pan palette. You got 3 mattes, 2 shimmers, and this one's so fun and beautiful. All of their palettes are magnetic, so you can pop them out, rearrange them. You could use this as like a base for a perfect travel palette if you're the kind of person that does that. Like I said, I like to keep the integrity of my palettes. It's just a me thing, but this one was fun and beautiful, and I've really been enjoying this brand, and I do have one more from them that you will see later on in this video. Alright y'all, so that is going to end part 1 of my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter video. Part 2 will go up tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel and you hit that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever that video goes live. Also, if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Let me know all of your thoughts down below, and until my next video, have a good one. Bye.